We all know the stories about doctors who quit medicine once their YouTube channels take off. But have you ever heard of someone doing the reverse? My guest today is a successful entrepreneur and YouTuber with over 253,000 subscribers in the coin collecting and precious metal space, who, after achieving success on YouTube and a very comfortable lifestyle, decided to embark on what can only be described as a grand second act, training to become a physician. During the middle of recording this tour, my guest today, Max Hockley, revealed that he is currently studying to enter medical school to become an emergency medicine doctor. During the tour, you'll hear more about this amazing second act and the medical organization he currently volunteers for that inspired him to take the next step to become an MD. But let me explain how this tour came to be in the first place. Earlier this year, I got an alert through my YouTube Studio app that a major YouTuber had just commented on one of my bookshelf tour videos. It was Max Hockley, who has a channel called Silverpicker, where he covers all the different aspects of precious metals and coin collecting with a special emphasis on silver. I share his interests in both coins and precious metals, so I immediately reached out to see if he'd be interested in doing a bookshelf tour, and he said yes. Besides the books on coins and metals and many other subjects, this tour also features a unique type of book I've never seen before in any of our previous tours on this channel, which is a binder of letters that all of Max's fans and friends over the years who first discovered him through his YouTube channel have sent him. I also asked Max if he had any advice for me, and he was kind enough to give me a mini YouTube coaching session, which I decided to leave in the video for the edification of all of you fellow YouTubers and booktubers who are joining us today. Before we jump in, just a quick note that there's some bonus resources that go along with this bookshelf tour in the first link in the description. There's a book giveaway, plus you can download all the high-resolution photos of Max's library. You'll also get a resources spreadsheet, which will give you links for where to find some of the key books and other resources we talked about in this video. You'll also get my classics resources spreadsheet, which collects in one place all the key details for the major facing page translation book sets like the Loeb Classical Library and other similar sets from Harvard University Press, as well as other publishers of facing page translation libraries. You'll also get a free book where I gathered all the best advice about how to manage your library and how to improve your reading from the 55 plus hours of bookshelf tours I've conducted over the past couple of years. Just click the first link in the description to get all of these free bonus resources. Also, if you'd like to do a bookshelf tour with me, please email timothy@timothykenny.com. Lastly, a big thank you to all of my students for your continued support that makes these long-form bookshelf tours possible. There's one course and one program that I teach that may interest you and are most relevant to the subjects we cover in this tour. The first item is my self-directed learner course, which helps you build all the skills required to pursue lifelong education through all the key steps like learning project organization, skill investing, research, reading and annotating, note-taking, memorizing, and putting your learning into action directly or through a program of deliberate practice. Please click the second link in the description for more on the self-directed learner course. The second item is my evidence-based YouTuber program, which will teach you everything you need to know about how to succeed as a creator on YouTube. It takes most creators a dozen or more hours to create each one of their videos, and even then, most channels fail, and most creators give up eventually, so it can be hard to justify dedicating so much time to building and growing a channel if you don't have a rock-solid system for deciding what to create and how to package it. The good news is that if you learn how to accurately model what is working in your area of YouTube, and you follow the gold standard evidence-based best practices in this program, you can virtually guarantee that you will find success on this platform. Please click the third link in the description to learn more. If you'd like to learn more about my other courses, programs, and learning tracks, and how you can support the production of these bookshelf tours, please click the fourth link in the description where you can find my complete course catalog. And now let's get into the bookshelf tour with Max Hockley. Maybe you could just say a little bit about what we're looking at here, maybe how you've organized your books and the main categories, and then we can jump into the silver books here.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I think it's just awesome. Who doesn't like to spend some time talking about books? So I have once I actually sent you this picture, it kind of made me realize how disorganized my bookshelf is and how that's going to be a project, going forward. But I would say that I have a few different categories of books that I like. So I have reference books, let's say. So some of those being on coins or precious metals that I use for my YouTube channel. And you can see those over there. I've got United States Paper Money, Strike It Rich, which is a book about errors and varieties. So basically coins that may look ordinary to, the undiscerning eye, but if you can see certain variations on the coin and identify it, they can actually be worth quite a lot of money, and you can find it right in Pocket Change. The U.S. paper money book is really just like a reference encyclopedia of all the paper money that's ever been printed by the U.S. And to non-numismatists, non-coin collectors, you may look at a $1 bill and say, okay, a dollar bill is a dollar bill is a dollar bill. But to a collector, the signature of the particular Secretary of the Treasury that's on the bill may be interesting, or the serial number or something like that. So for us, there's a lot of information, and it's not the kind of book that you sit down and read on an evening by the fireplace, but it's an indispensable resource for collectors. And then you can see there's that spiral bound book, which is called the Red Book, which is sort of like the same idea for the U.S. paper money encyclopedia, but it's the catalog of U.S. coins. But honestly, with reference books and stuff like that, as the hobby gets more popular with the younger generation, as technology improves, most of this stuff has moved online. It's just significantly easier to reference things and to look things up on different websites. So I use this stuff more now for inspiration for videos that I do, and less for actually looking up information. And I usually use the online versions for looking up information. I have a couple of coin books over there. Most of the coin stuff, the actual physical coins, I keep in a safety deposit box at the bank. But I do have a couple little things here and there, like that gold embossed album over there, which is it's basically a bunch of paper currency in there from a video project that I did.
Oh, this right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's not too much on coins, even though, my life is all about coins and precious metals. I don't actually have that much literature on the topic. Most of my books, Krause Publications is a pretty popular numismatics publishing company. And just sort of some of the other categories of books that I have. I'm mostly, in terms of what I read for pleasure, I read a lot of literary fiction, and I also read a lot of nonfiction, mostly about the Middle East and Israel. And I also really enjoy graphic novels. So I have a bunch a little smattering of all those different things. And then I have a little section on Hebrew literature. I read in Hebrew and in English. So I have books on both of those.
Okay, so I thought we'd start at the top and just work our way down. And I noticed we had a bunch of albums up at the very top. So are there any in particular that you'd like to maybe pull off the shelf and take a closer look at?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna grab some.
Okay.
So I'll take a couple of my favorite ones and some noteworthy ones.
Got a Love Supreme, John Coltrane. I'd like to look at that one. I don't know if that's one of your favorites or not, but
sure. Yeah, absolutely. We'll take that. And let's see, there's one that I was looking for. This is a good one. Okay. So I took a few off the shelf. Some of them that are, sort of meaningful, have a good story. So in terms of my record collecting, I am by no means an expert or, a serious collector, but I do, if I'm listening to music, I'm mostly listening on Spotify or something, I listen, with my phone and a Bluetooth speaker. But there are times where I want to set a mood. And if I have friends over and we're having some drinks or we're having dinner, it really does set the mood to put a record on. And records are extremely expensive nowadays if you want to get like a new pressing of something. So I really only buy records that are that have like high replay value. So I can listen to jazz nonstop. I can listen to the same jazz album for years and years and years and never get sick of it. So for example, this is a John Coltrane album, probably one of his most famous, if not his most famous. And then my favorite jazz album of all time is Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. It is hardcore, really weird, really like trippy jazz, and I love it. And I can listen to that nonstop. The only problem is a lot of my friends they think of this more as noise than as music. That's for myself.
Could we also show the back of each one also?
Yeah, sure. So this is the back of A Love Supreme. I'm sure this is not what the original record is. That's a new pressing. Most of my jazz records are new pressings. So this is the front of Bitches Brew and the back, which is awesome. It is definitely one of the most like iconic jazz album arts of all time for sure.
By the way, you said that new pressings are really expensive. Could you just give people a sense of how much they do cost?
Yeah, so I mean, like you can get a new like you can go to a used record store, and if it's like a common album, maybe you'll get it for like $10, $15, something like that, which is still a lot of money when you think about how you can have all of music, like literally all of music, for $7 a month on Spotify. But a brand new jazz record, might be like $40, something like that. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. But the idea of spending more on a single album than I did when I was, a teenager buying CDs, today in 2026, it's just a little nuts. It's totally an indulgence. So, every now and again, I'll treat myself, get a new jazz album and enjoy it.
Are they usually a single vinyl, or is it usually two for the length of the?
And Brew is two, A Love Supreme is one. I think that's based mostly on just like what it was originally. So I'd say most of the albums I have are singles, but they are single albums, but there are a bunch that have two.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the records that I have up on the shelf, I have my section of jazz, which is the only one that's actually like actively growing. And then I have a bunch of records that my dad gave me, and he's a big music guy. And this is one of the albums that he gave me. And he has a pretty big collection, and every time I go visit, he stacks a few. We listen to them together, and then I take whichever ones I liked.
Wow.
And this one I actually like the art more than I like the album, but it's pretty iconic. It's Cheap Thrills by Big Brother and the Holding Company, which is Janis Joplin. And anyway, he was in the 70s when he was in college. He was a his like college radio rock and roll DJ. So I have tons of albums from that era. There was one that I was looking for. I can't remember which one it is, but it says like not for resale. And it's one that he had from the studio, like in the 70s when he was, spinning these records on radio. And then this one is Edith Piaf, probably one of the most famous French singers. And this album was my grandfather's. And it was my father's father. I never met him. He passed away before I was born. But it's cool listening to, to his records, 60 years later or whatever it is. So that's just a little snapshot of my record collection.
Cool.
So my collection grows, I guess, with the jazz, but then, I'll every now and again when I'm at my dad's, I'll pick something out that I like. But the truth is, like, even with some of my favorite albums, I have a couple of other new albums in there. I've got like a Nirvana, the MTV Unplugged, which is a great album. But even that, it's just, even with my favorite albums that are not jazz or classical music, it's just there's only so many times I can listen to it.
And so now we're moving into some books here.
Yeah.
Any in particular you want to talk about?
Actually, yes. There's the one that's next to the one that says Israel and the Palestinian territories to the right of that. So that is a Hebrew language cultural tour guide to Ethiopia, and it was written by a friend of mine. I have a few books that I'll highlight, give some shout outs to friends who are authors. I believe that is the first like natively Hebrew written guidebook to Ethiopia, and it's a tour guidebook with cultural insights and all sorts of stuff. There's a friend of mine that, as a teenager, he always volunteered with people with special needs, and then he just became fascinated by Ethiopia. Took a trip there, ended up meeting some communities that have different programs for people with special needs. He started volunteering there, and years go by, and he ends up making his own summer camps for kids with special needs in Ethiopia, and he turned that into his career, where he does that and then also organizes just tourism trips, cultural tourism trips to Ethiopia. So just a cool book. His name's Avram Rabinovich, and just a very cool guy.
Is there an English version of it, or?
There is not an English version, so most of your audience will probably find that completely irrelevant, but it's still cool. And, it takes a lot to put together any kind of book, whether it's a literary book or otherwise. So it always makes me happy when a friend or relative publishes something.
Definitely.
Yes, and there's that box. That box is not a book. It is a sign that says that it's like a light box where you can put up a bunch of different letters, and it used to say like and subscribe, and I had it in my background of my videos. So I haven't used that in a while, and it's just sitting on the shelf, and will probably, unfortunately, end up in a landfill fairly soon. And over there, those are all my various travels. I do photo books after I've done quite a bit of traveling, and I make photo books after each trip. Although I am now like 4 years behind in actually making them. It takes for anybody who's watching that has done any of these photo books, it really does take a lot of effort to go through all the hundreds of pictures you take, find the best ones, organize it how you want, put in notes how you want. So I've been putting that off for way too long for the latest trips. But some of my favorite ones there are a couple of real adventures that I did. The one that says Tanzania in March 2017, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with a bunch of friends from business school. I did an MBA at Emory in Atlanta, and a bunch of us just decided on our spring break to go to Tanzania and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So that's a special one for me. And then the one above that is I ended up years later working in Kenya. And after I finished a project there, I met a buddy of mine in Cape Town, South Africa, and we did this epic road trip all the way up to Namibia and back. So that one doesn't have anything on the spine, but it's probably the coolest trip I've ever done.
So are these books, you slide it into a plastic sleeve, or?
No, they're printed. I'll grab one off and show you.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't know if you can show the Tanzania one or the Kilimanjaro, but I bet people would be interested in those.
Definitely. So these are 2 Africa trips. This is the Kilimanjaro, and that's me being an egomaniac, and it's all about me. Even though there were 10 of us, I think, or 9 of us that did it. So there's the rest of us. That's day 1 when we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then there's that's, I think, right after summiting. I think we were pretty bushed.
Well,
and this is at the bottom of the mountain. They have a little concession area. There we go. And you can buy beers, and we certainly did. So that's Tanzania. And then this one is my road trip with my buddy Kenny. We went to Cape Town and all the way up to Namibia, and great shot on the back. I think my camera's auto-focusing, so sorry about that.
Yeah, that's good. We got it.
Yeah. And yeah, so we just a lot of great trips. You can see it just it prints directly on the page, and it's great memories. It's like you spend thousands of dollars, on travel. So these books are kind of pricey, but you add like an extra $60 at the end of the trip to have an amazing souvenir, something that, will last way longer than a shot glass or a pack of novelty coasters or something.
I'm curious what service you used for these.
So as you can see, there's a few different ones. As I've not been fully happy with any of them, and I think the one that you see most, the one that's kind of like has that those ones that have like canvas bound, those I think were called My Publisher, and I think that they no longer exist. I think that's why I switched. I can't remember exactly, but tried Shutterfly. I've tried Pick a Book. I think you just gotta figure out which one to give it a
Yeah.
shot. I can't recommend any, unfortunately. I think they're all fine, and but I haven't found one that I like truly love.
Okay, so I saw French book up there, and it looks like there's some more asimils of well-known
Yeah.
language learning. So I'm curious what your French background is.
So my French background, I have relatives from France that I'm very close with, and they introduced me actually to my now ex-girlfriend who lived in Paris, and I dated her in Paris for quite a while. So I wanted to learn French. And it's definitely taken a little bit of a back seat. We'll get to a little bit about what I'm studying now, probably, which even viewers of my channel don't know yet. But I'm actually trying to get into medical school as a major career change. So my reading and which we'll get to also, my reading and my sort of pet projects, my pet academic projects have definitely taken a back seat to sort of the grueling intensity of studying for the MCAT.
That's awesome. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's like, oh, I got my MD. Now I'm gonna go to med school, or sorry, business school.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing it the other way around. You know, MBA. I remember saying to my mom actually when I graduated, I said, I can't believe, after I finished grad school, I'm like, I can't believe I'm done with school like forever. And she said, well, don't, never say never. I'm like, come on, I'm not going back to school. I already got, a master's degree. And, she was right. Listen to your mom, right? She always knows.
So now we've got some gaming stuff here. Actually, I did want to ask you about you said you read in Hebrew as well as English, and
Yes.
maybe you could talk about how you learned Hebrew, how you learned English. I'm not sure in terms of how that all worked, but and any other languages you have or have studied.
Yeah, so language is definitely a use it or lose it type thing, unfortunately. So my native tongue is English, but I'm Jewish and I grew up learning Hebrew and I have a lot of Israeli relatives and I actually live in Tel Aviv. So I've lived back and forth from Israel and the US, most of my life from my adolescence through now, but I've been living here permanently since 2019. So I've been, obviously there's no replacement for your mother tongue, but I'm fluent in Hebrew. I'm studying, I will be studying medicine in Hebrew. I did a 1 year post-bac where, to basically make up all the science courses that I did not do in undergrad. So that was all in Hebrew. So my Hebrew is fluent, but not native. And, reading at this point in Hebrew is still slower than in English, but there's for anybody who's watching that's bilingual, I don't know if you're bilingual at all, but there's no substitute for reading the book in the language it was written in. So if I'm reading a book in English, I'm going to read it in English. If a book was written in Hebrew, I'm going to read it in Hebrew. But if a book was written in, say, like French or Japanese, I'll still probably read it in English. First of all, English is a richer language, and I'm much faster reader in English. Oh, and yeah, so when I said that I'll use it or lose it, I actually majored for undergrad. I majored in Chinese, and I never was fluent in Chinese, and I would say I was kind of barely on the cusp of conversational. But I graduated college in 2012, and I worked in China for a little while after that, and I had connections to China for quite a while, but I didn't really keep up the language, and now it's been like a decade plus since I've really used it. And my Chinese at this point is, if I meet somebody Chinese and we chat a little bit, we'll have the same conversation over and over again, which is I studied Chinese. Oh, how long? 4 years. Wow, your Chinese is so good. No, it's not. And that's about the long and the short of it. So unfortunately, I've kind of lost it. I think if I went back to China and, I was dropped there, I could definitely get by, but I would have to spend, 6 months or a year to even get back to where I was.
I don't know if you see this is just sort of an aspect of coins that I'm particularly interested in is the from sort of the practical or sort of prepper point of view, the 1 ounce gold and the 1 ounce silver coins are sort of
Yeah.
like the if you want to actually in some kind of scenario, doomsday scenario, have something that people will actually accept. That's sort of the standard, right?
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about precious metals, gold and silver, and coin collecting, and I kind of divide it on my channel into a few different categories. Like, I have my coin collection, right? That is purely hobby, right? Even though the coins themselves, some of them are gold, some of them are silver, and they have, value just by the precious metals. For me, that's just purely for the hobby, for the love of the game. I don't care if the price goes up or down. I mean, obviously, I prefer the price to go up, the value to go up, but that's not my main point. And then I have physical gold and silver, like what you just described, 1 ounce coins or fractional, etc. American silver eagles or American gold eagles or other, silver and gold bullion coins. And those are sort of a mix of speculative, where I want it to go up and increase in value. It's a great place to park cash if you're going to have cash. Cash typically loses value over time to inflation, and gold and silver do not. So that's like a great place to store wealth, but also in like as they say in the biz, SHTF or shit hits the fan situations. You want to have some precious metals, and if you're the kind of person that's putting all your money into gold and silver and burying it in your backyard and all that kind of stuff, like I kind of fight against that on my channel because there's a lot of loud voices that I consider kind of extremist in that case. I think that that's overboard, because there's lots of different ways to prep for SHTF situations, but you should also prep for ordinary things, right? If you're saying I want to live the best life possible and the most secure life possible, well, saving for your retirement in a Roth IRA, the odds of you making it to retirement age are much higher than for somebody to drop like an EMP bomb and destroy all the internet. Like, so it kind of makes me, laugh a little bit if I see like a prepper channel, and they're talking about like how they've stored 500 different kinds of seeds in a temperature controlled environment in case they need to like repopulate the earth and regrow all food, and they're prepping for atom bombs and all sorts of crazy stuff, but that are like 100 pounds overweight and they've got a pack of cigarettes in their pocket. I'm like, if you're prepping for the most unlikely scenarios, why don't you just like prep for the likely scenarios too? Like,
Yeah.
get some exercise, quit smoking, eat an apple.
Yeah. It's funny. I've even had a couple commenters on my channel say they're collecting books for that reason, that they, want to just preserve knowledge, and there could be sort of a doomsday scenario. But the reason I brought up the 1 ounce coins is because I had started looking at at China's the sort of panda
Yeah.
coins, and just from sort of a polyglot perspective, I thought like, countries and treasuries must put a lot of thought into the design and the language that they put on their 1 ounce gold and silver coins, because that is sort of the lingua franca in a sense of that's how, if somebody isn't, big into China, but they collect coins, they might, if they're going to have one coin from China, it very likely would be that gold or silver. So it's almost like a national flag to me. And so I was curious if you've like, in terms of different languages and even like, I don't know that I've ever seen like, I don't know if Israel puts out gold and silver 1 ounce coins, but like it just sort of came to mind as you were talking about China, that I don't hear a lot talked about their 1 ounce coins. And so just like, is there any interesting crossover you've noticed between 1 ounce coins from different countries and maybe the language they use or the writing or design features or anything else that might interest people?
Yeah, it is interesting. And I would say that there's like a few different categories, and kind of what I was getting to before I went into my long-winded thing about coins and preppers and all that stuff is just that. So I have my coin collection, I have my precious metals that are like, for these emergency situations. And then I also invest in precious metals speculatively, just to buy and sell, to make some money. But for these 1 ounce coins, I think for people who are watching that don't know much about precious metals or bullion, there's like two main categories for silver bullion, and that is bullion coins and bullion rounds. So a round is a generic coin that's been minted by a private company, right? So company buys machines and they can create their own coins, and or they're not technically coins, they're rounds, but they look like coins, right? And they can be silver and they're great, right? It's an ounce of silver is an ounce of silver is an ounce of silver. But the reason why people like to invest in government bullion, whether it's US like American Silver Eagles, or China like the Chinese pandas, but there's also Australian Philharmonicers, Canadian Maple Leafs, Mexican Libertads, British Britannias. So there's a lot of different governments mint these coins, and the reason why they're so popular and actually generally have a premium over their melt value, right? If the silver coin is worth $50, it might sell for $55 or $60 or sometimes even more, because having a government minted coin means that there's much more, I guess, anti-counterfeiting measures. It's a trusted weight, it's a trusted purity, and it's almost like sort of just a stamp of approval of a government. So for any large country, right, even if, forget the politics side, right, most people are not going to question whether the investment grade bullion coins like the Chinese pandas coming out of China are truly what they say they are, which is 1 ounce of 999 fine pure silver. So there is definitely a benefit to collecting those. In terms of the design and the language used, I think typically it's a the coins are a canvas to show national pride and what countries find important. And even more interesting, I think, than the silver coins, even though I mostly deal with precious metals and coins, is who is featured on them. So in the US, the 1 ounce silver coin it's Walking Liberty, it's Lady Liberty. So that shows, justice and liberty and freedom and all the things that America stands for. And then the reverse is an eagle and the crest, the shield with the eagle, and in one hand it has in one talon it has an olive branch, and in the other talon it has an arrow to signify, like, strength through peace and strength through war. And in China they have the panda, and then depends on the year, they change up their designs a lot. And that's like sort of one of their national symbols of pride, and animals play a very important role in their culture. And you look at like their zodiac calendar, etc. So there's a lot of, I think every country takes a lot of pride in what they in how they want to idealize the way that they present themselves to the world. But on that note, there's something really interesting. I did a video once about sort of my critique of American paper currency. And it's just that obviously the dollar is, like, no pun intended, like the gold standard of currencies around the world. And I think it's one of the most boring bills. And I think it's an interesting reflection of like what we value as a society. And I only really noticed that when I moved to Israel full time. So on Israeli currency, you have poets and inventors and culturally significant figures, not just political leaders. And I think, you look at different kingdoms and they have the king or the queen. You look at different countries and you see political leaders on some notes, and then other countries have cultural leaders and cultural icons. And I did a video where I used AI to reimagine what US currency would be like if we had cultural icons and artists and other, leaders on our currency. And I think that it would be really a great thing to do, honestly, change things up. Nobody's going to listen to me, though, so we're going to continue to have dead presidents.
Yeah. I mean, there was the whole thing with the $20 bill, and I think it was Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
And then there was some issue with that. So, but I do think when you said inventors, I thought of Ben Franklin, because he's on the $100 bill, and he's kind of the diplomat, but but had that inventor side to him.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good point. But I'd say he's like the exception to the rule. And he's still probably featured on the bill more as a statesman and less as a, cultural icon.
Right, right. So does Israel put out any coinage or?
Yes, so there is so actually Israeli circulating coinage is really interesting because all of the coins are based on archaeological findings, meaning the designs. So some of them are taken from, like, the designs are just modernized versions of Judean coins, from 2000 years ago. And I always think that it's really cool. And I've been meaning to do a video, so I will eventually do that where I get the original source coin and the new coin and compare them. I have I'm not a huge ancient coin collector, and I'm certainly not an expert in that part of the field, but I do have a couple of interesting Judean coins that I just bought because I like them. And I think I will do that video eventually, sort of comparing the old versus the new, because it's one of the few places in the world, I think maybe the only place in the world where they've done that, where sort of resurrected the design for their currency from its ancestral lineage. But in terms of like their gold and silver, especially they still do produce new gold and silver coins for collectors and investors, but it was really popular here in like the 70s and 80s, all the way even up to the early 2000s. I forgot the name. It's something like the Israel Coin and Metal Corporation or something. It's like it's not a government body. It's like a private company, or maybe like a pseudo governmental body. There's a lot of countries around the world that outsource their minting, especially smaller countries like Israel. So it's sort of pseudo governmental. They do like a lot of commemorative stuff, medals and coins. But I wouldn't say that the Israeli gold and silver coins are particularly revolutionary or popular worldwide. There are a couple that I really think are iconic that I love. There's Israel's, I think, 25th anniversary coin, which is a silver coin with David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, on one side, and then a really, really artfully done copy of the Declaration of Independence on the other side. And it's just a very well-designed, beautiful coin. It has kind of a little bit of that sort of famous Bauhaus design style to it, which is really famous in Tel Aviv. So I love that coin. But I do collect, in terms of my own collection, I collect coins from the British Mandate of Palestine, which is sort of that weird historical period between the Ottoman Empire and the founding of the modern state of Israel. The British controlled Mandatory Palestine, which includes Israel, the West Bank, and Jordan, which obviously was, chopped up later on. But the coins are really interesting because they have they have Palestine and Israel written in English, Hebrew, and Arabic.
Wow.
And they're made from all sorts of different metals. Different years have different metals because of, just the region they're in. In the 1920s through 40s, it was a poor, war-torn region, sort of almost, forgotten about by the different empires that controlled it. So, you don't have brass one year, so you make it out of steel. You don't have, so it's just a very interesting set of coins, and obviously one that I'm personally interested in.
Do you have videos about that coins you've mentioned on your channel?
Yeah, I have a couple videos about that, because for any of like my most serious collections, I also do like collection update videos. Like when I get a few new coins, I update the album together with my audience. And then I also did a couple of videos about the British Mandate of Palestine coins, more for like making a point about like the historical record. Like I'm not really, I'm happy to talk politics with you if you want, but I'm not, my channel, my YouTube channel is almost entirely apolitical. That's not to say I'm apolitical, but that's not my goal when making videos about coins. It's not to, it's to get people into coin collecting and precious metals investing. It's not to sort of push any political agenda. But when I see misinformation, that I have a platform that works to push back against that, I do that. So at the beginning of the Israel-Gaza war, there was a lot of videos coming out where people were saying, "See, Palestine, the state of Palestine existed long before the state of Israel was established. You can see it on the coins because it says Palestine, right?" But those people don't read Hebrew and don't read that it says Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, in Hebrew also. So it was mostly a video to correct the, to fight back against this misinformation that I was seeing, and less about politics. But um, that was the only video I think that I'd done recently about my British Netted Palestine collection.
Hmm. You mentioned the sort of third piece of things was speculative investing, and I
Yeah.
was just curious. That's basically just on like a trading platform online.
Yeah, I've done some. I also do some physical precious metals trading as well. So, for example, when silver hit $50, I was convinced that we were on a very unprecedented run, and I bought a monster box of American Silver Eagles, which is basically like a sort of like the largest size of the largest unit sold by the U.S. Mint of 1 ounce silver coin. So it's 500 ounces of silver. So that was a pretty big investment. I bought it for $50 an ounce. And then when silver was approaching 100, I think I sold it at like $97 or $98 an ounce. So, that was not something that I kept for part of my coin collection or even as my silver stack, my long-term silver or gold holdings, for those SHTF situations. But that was just, I believed that silver was going to be on a run, and I was right. And I took some chips off the table. And then there's a bunch of ETFs in silver that I've bought, ETFs in other metals that I've bought, sold, and some that I still hold. So those are more, outside the silver stacking or coin collecting, which is most of what I talk about on my channel, but, have this deep knowledge in the field. So I'm certainly not going to squander that.
Did you do anything in terms of options or miners?
A little bit of mining stocks. Yeah, definitely. Those are more risky, but they also potentially have more upside. And what's important to look for, like in mining stocks, is first of all, obviously, like the claim, like the land that they're on, like what are the odds that they're actually going to be able to pull out the stuff that they claim that they're going to, but also the team, because the big risk for a mining operation is like any other company invests in. It's the business risk, right? It's, are the people who founded the company capable of running a business, right? So it's not just like, you're investing in silver and you have the physical asset no matter what. Here you have human beings that sometimes can be idiots, right? So, or they can be phenomenal geniuses. So you have to be really careful when you're picking a mining stock to invest in. But if you find a good one and they run like a well-oiled machine, they can make significantly more money than the underlying metal.
Hmm. Okay, so maybe we can circle back to this shelf here. I noticed that you've got these two. I don't know how many sides are on that die here, but maybe you could talk a little bit about this gaming stuff.
Yeah, sure. So it's funny because right there, to anybody who's watching that is a serious gamer, they'll see kind of like a strange dissonance between the games that are on there and the 20-sided die. Because a 20-sided die is a little bit of like a dog whistle to like real nerds. And the games that I have up there, Codenames, Splendor, and Catan, those are like what we would call like normie games. And that's a little bit of a diss against them, but I still love them. It's not that I don't like them, but Settlers of Catan is probably like the most popular board game right now, probably for the last like decade. I'm completely sick of it. I was playing it since I was in high school, and I can't even play it anymore because I've just played so many games. Splendor is really fun. It's probably one of the most simple games I've ever played, but it is really fun. It's actually, if you're playing against somebody who's good, like it is really hard. And Codenames is definitely my favorite, like party game, I guess you could say. Like every time my family gets together for holidays, like we'll play tons and tons of Codenames with almost like, people, family members jumping in and out, and it's really fun. And if anybody who's not played Codenames, it's basically a game where you have a grid of different cards, each with a code name, and they can be words like pirate, banana, Egypt, all sorts of just random words. And without saying those words, you have to try and make your teammate guess certain words that are, you have a list of your words and your opponent has a list of their words. And you have to try and get your teammate to guess the words that are on your sheet before they get theirs. And the way you do that is by making clues, without saying the words, of course, making clues that in really strange ways connect as many words as possible. So, if you can find a way to connect pirate, cucumber, and Mongolia, and you can get there faster than your teammate who may only be able to connect one or two things at once. So, phenomenal game. Have you ever played it?
No, but it sounds like knowing multiple languages might help with that.
So when I play with other bilingual people, we make a rule. I'm not even. It might even be in the rules, but we make a rule about not. You can't use direct translations. It's because then it's too. But if your viewers are readers, and this is a word lovers game, highly, highly recommend. But back to the 20-sided die. That's mostly associated with like Dungeons and Dragons, which I never got into. I've played it a couple times. My friends are still trying to convince me to try it more. But my love for games is almost entirely tied up with Magic the Gathering, which is a collectible trading card game that was started in 1993 and has gotten more and more popular over the years, to the point today where it's more popular than it's ever been. In the last year, they had like their 3 most profitable sets that they've ever produced, and yada yada yada. So I've been playing since I was about 8, on and off, but I've been playing quite a bit. And then yes, there we go. That is a book from my childhood. I remember sitting and poring over the pages of all the cool cards. This was not necessarily before the internet, but certainly before the internet was what it is today. I certainly didn't, and even if it was on there, I didn't know that you could go online and look at, pictures of every Magic card. So when I saw this, I remember it was in Barnes and Noble, and I was probably 10 when I got that. And it's just a book that has like pictures of all the different cards. You know what? I'll grab it so any of your viewers who don't know what Magic cards are.
Definitely.
So this is the official encyclopedia. It's funny because this is what all the cards in the whole game were. Now today, in 2026, there are over 30,000 different cards that have been produced over the years. So this is kind of what they look like. And it's just sort of a encyclopedia of all the different cards, a directory of all the different cards. And I remember just poring over this, sitting in my bedroom and imagining all these cool cards that I could get and the decks that I would go with them. And here I am. And here I am at 37 years old, still playing this wonderful game. I'd say it's even more relevant nowadays because we spend so much time on screens. I think it's pretty wild to think about that. My friends and I get together every week, sometimes even twice a week, and we're sitting, a bunch of friends, anywhere from like 4 to 12 or 15 of us, not looking at screens, not looking at our phones for like 4 or 5 hours at a time, twice a week. So it's pretty amazing, honestly. It's a highly strategic game. And I remember when I was a kid, because, sort of tying it back to reading, when I was a kid, my mom, they just sort of looked at my cousin and I would play nonstop. And my mom would just look at us and say, stop, you're playing too much. Like, it's too much. And then I remember the one word where it sort of changed her mind or her attitude towards the game. I referred to something as diabolical, and I was probably like 9. And she goes, "Where did you learn that word?" And I said, "Magic cards." And from that point on, she was she ceased to be a hater and became a promoter, because I learned tons and tons of vocabulary. And then I remember using the word carapace, also like as a young teenager. And my mom said, "Magic cards?" And I said, "Yep." And she goes, I wish that you learn these from books, but I'm just glad you learned these words anyway. Um, so I've been playing a long time, and then Final Girl that you're looking at now, it's a game that I only started playing recently, and it is unique because it is a one-player game. It's a one-player board game. And the reason I bought it is when I was doing my post-bac, last year to get into medical school, you're spending so much time studying, and I'm sitting in front of a screen during exam periods. And right now while I'm preparing for, it's actually the Israeli version of the MCAT, but while I'm preparing for that, you're spending 5-6 hours a day staring at a computer screen reading, hard science. And, obviously sometimes when I finish, I want to just watch TV and blob out. But other times, like I want a break, but I don't want to be looking at a screen. So I had heard about this game, and I remember my first thought was, who would want to play a one-player game? But then I'm like, you know what? This would be a great way to not look at a screen, and also not be, be stimulated and take a break, but not be reading or watching TV or something. And it's been a lot of fun. It's like the shtick with this is you are the final girl in a horror movie, and you have to get away from the slasher, killer, or and they have lots of different expansions and stuff like that. So you can see one of them is about like a haunted house and is about like a poltergeist, and the other is about like a summer camp with a murderous, villain. And they're like, you play, it's like a half an hour, something like that. So it's really perfect for like taking a break during studying, not looking at a screen, but also not doing anything too mentally taxing.
Could you talk a little bit about how you decided to go to medical school? Because it seems like just such an interesting how that would have happened.
Yeah. So it's kind of a confluence of a few different things. I always kind of liked the idea of it, even as a kid growing up. I never took it seriously. Like I didn't do pre-med in college. I didn't even take any serious science courses. I just did like whatever the requirements were. I took meteorology and geology, which was basically like me and the football team. So it wasn't the most serious science studies. But I always liked the idea of it. Um, and then when I moved to Israel full time, right after COVID, I moved before, but right after COVID, I decided I wanted to do something to like give back, and I became a volunteer medic. So I did training through an organization called United Hatzalah, and it's an incredible organization. I found out about it through a Nas Daily video. Are you familiar with Nas Daily?
No.
So has one of like the biggest social media presences like of all time. You know, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of viewers. And he just does these short videos on interesting people. And he did one, and he's also a very interesting guy because he's in Israeli Arab, so he's Palestinian and Israeli. And he just does a lot of I guess like he does, his main thing isn't about like the conflict or peace or anything like that, but he's become a really interesting moderate voice in like coexistence and stuff just because of who he is, like his identity. But I saw a video that he did like 10 years ago about this organization called United Hatzalah. Hatzalah in Hebrew means rescue, and it's basically Uber for medics. So we ride around on motorcycles, or what we call ambucycles, and we have the same gear and the same training as an ambulance. The only thing we don't have is like a backboard, but we have the same gear as an ambulance, same training, and but we can get through traffic faster. So somebody calls, after an accident or an illness, and instead of the ambulance being stuck in traffic, we're spread out. We're just going about our daily lives, and we get a call on our walkie-talkie, and it's a high-tech walkie-talkie. It sends the call out to the closest 5 medics. We hop on our bikes and we get there in 90 seconds. That's the goal.
Wow.
And then we can start stabilizing the patient until the ambulance gets there. So I've been doing that since I think 2021 or maybe early 2022, and I just became very passionate about it. And I love, everybody loves helping people, but it's become so amazing that I'm able to like do that on a daily basis, and it's not just like like a beach cleanup day or visit the old age home once a month. It's something that like I can really combine into my everyday life where I'm sitting, I was studying last week at a WeWork with a friend, and there was a call that happened to be right outside. And literally in 60 seconds, I was outside performing CPR, and it was amazing. I got a call from the hospital. By the way, that never happens. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I've never had the hospital call me afterwards, but to tell me that the patient is already awake, already extubated, and has a very good prognosis. And like that's the power of this organization of Hatzalah, that you could be going about your regular day and you don't even know that there's an emergency right outside. And when you have the training and equipment to deal with it, it's like just an amazing thing.
It sounds pretty adrenaline pumping. I was just thinking, like, have you ever been like recording a YouTube video or like live on YouTube and you get one of these walkie-talkies and you have to like run out and just...
I've been in business meetings. I've never, because with YouTube, I can always pause and come back. But I've been in meetings, and when I had a startup also. I've had a couple startups, but one of them, I got to there were clients that I worked with on a regular basis, and they knew me, and they just knew if they heard that beep 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 of my walkie-talkie, all right, Max, we'll talk to you in a little. So I've had that happen, and it's also kind of a joke among friends. Like, I'll be hanging out with friends and they'll hear it and they're like, all right, we'll see you in a couple hours. Obviously it's really only, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes, but they'll, it's become sort of just a known thing that I might disappear for half an hour here or there.
That's really cool. Can you also talk about why you decided to move to Israel full time?
Yeah. Let me just get one more point just about how I got up with the medical school thing. So I have had my YouTube channel since 2011, but I started taking it seriously in 2019 when I moved full time to Israel, and that'll sort of be a good segue when I get to the why and the when. And so I've been building my channel for quite a long time, and thank God I can make a living on YouTube. I had a startup in the car rental space. It was It was basically a platform for people that wanted to be Uber drivers but didn't have a car, and we matched them with car rental companies, and then we provided the specialized insurance, and we did all the logistics. And we raised a bunch of money from venture capital, and we ran the company for about 6 years, and we just due to different macroeconomic things and some industry related things, mostly related to insurance prices, we had to wind down the business. So we're in the process of selling some of the assets, but I got to a crossroads where my main job, so to speak, right, my startup, we were winding down. And at the same time, I had this income stream from YouTube where I didn't have to just run out and get a new job or start something new. And I have this passion for medicine and working with patients, etc. And I just thought to myself, like, it was a true like YOLO moment. Like, if not now, then when? And I said, let's try it. And I said, you know what? I'll sign up for the post-bac courses, right? I'll do one semester. I'll take 3 courses, see how it goes. And then I passed that, and I found it interesting. I said, you know what? I'll do one more semester. And then all of a sudden, here I am, less than 30 days before it's called the Mivchan Yeda, which is it's called knowledge test, but it's effectively the Israeli version of the MCAT. So I've got about 26 days until that exam, and I sure hope that I pass and get in.
Yeah.
And so you were saying about my move to Israel. So
Yeah.
I have, I was born in New York. I'm Jewish, and I have I've always had family in Israel. And as an adolescent and a kid and as a young adult, I would come to Israel for periods of a time. Like, I spent a year after graduating high school here in Israel. And I think, there are a couple things that drew me to it. I think culturally, I actually fit in better here in Israel than I do in the US. Not that I had a bad life there, right? I have friends, family, I had a good job, etc. It was just that I think the Israeli culture, the way I always describe it is when I would go to a party as a young adult in New York, the first question people would say is, what do you do? what do you do? And it was always about work. It was always about, earning a living. In Israel, it's not like that. People really get to know each other more deeply, and it's a much more, I think, just a richer experience. I think people also value their time way more than money, which is something that's always been kind of important to me. Granted, I understand that comes from like a point of privilege where I've been, more or less financially successful in my businesses, et cetera. I'm not like a bajillionaire, right? But like, I've been successful enough to be comfortable. So I understand that that's coming from like a relatively privileged place. But at this stage, I much more value like the marginal hour than the marginal dollar. And I think that that's culturally baked in to Israeli society. And people are just outside all the time. Whether they're enjoying coffee at a cafe, there's a tremendous cafe culture here, or they're jogging on the boardwalk next to the beach, or working out. There's just I think a really healthy work-life balance here that I didn't find in the U.S. or at least in the parts of the U.S. that I lived in. Obviously, the U.S. is not monolithic; it's huge. But I lived in New York, New Jersey, and Atlanta, and at least in those places, I didn't find that sort of pace that I was looking for. So that's the lifestyle side. But then there's also the ideological side. I know that Zionism has become it's been hijacked and become almost a slur. But Zionism, as it was intended to be used, is the belief that Jews have the right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland. That doesn't deny anybody else their rights. Vis-a-vis Palestinians, it doesn't deny anything for anybody else. It just says we want our own. We want to be in charge of our own destiny and our own protection here. So I wanted to be part of that, and I wanted to move here and live here full time. And that's what I did. So in 2019, I packed my bags and came, and I've been living here since.
Could you talk a little bit about the cafe culture? Because there's a long history of cafe culture in terms of intellectual scenes, in France and other countries. But I'm not familiar with the Israeli version of that.
Yeah, so I would say that you could divide it into like two categories, and it's kind of almost how you divide the country also. And we'll use like broad strokes and say Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So Jerusalem cafe culture is more probably what people are imagining about like the Middle East, right? Sitting and drinking like Turkish coffee, out of like a finjan, and playing backgammon, sitting outside the cafe. And you do see that, like it's a stereotype, but you do see that a lot in places like Jerusalem, especially more mixed communities, right? Jerusalem is heavily Jewish and heavily Arab. Places like Haifa are heavily Jewish and heavily Arab. You'll see more of that kind of, I guess what you'd call like traditional Middle Eastern culture, in terms of like their cafe culture. And then in Tel Aviv, which is a more, I think it's much, it's more secular, first of all, secular and intellectual. And I also want to make a point. I'm not making a moral judgment of which one's better or worse, just describing it as I see it. I think there's pros and cons to both lifestyles, I guess. But in Tel Aviv, we have multiple like bookshop cafes that have been here for a long time, right? So used bookstore / cafe. And what's interesting is, yes, you definitely see people sitting at cafes and working on their computers and just doing work. But something that is like distinctly different from like American cafe culture, or at least the American cafe culture that I'm used to, and Israeli, is that you just see a lot of people sitting and having coffee and talking, or sitting and having coffee and reading, from physical books or newspapers. And I love that. Like,
what do you mean from? You mean
say it again?
You said they're speaking from books or newspapers?
They're speaking to each other or reading from physical books, as opposed to like sitting and working on their computers. Like if I go into a Starbucks in the US, and even like a cooler, more like hipster independent coffee shop in the US, I really do see lots and lots of people sitting in front of their computers by themselves and working. And here I see people meeting and talking, and it's not, sometimes it's social, sometimes it's business, sometimes it's a date, but it's really, really nice. Like you go, and I would also expand that to bars too. Like everything is outside, right? They have indoor areas, but it's funny, you'll go to a bar or a cafe and it's packed. You can't find a seat. And then you walk inside and there's like 5 tables open just because the weather is so nice. People like being outside. And if you want a spot inside, there's always available, but everybody wants to sit outside. And also the coffee is spectacular here. It's definitely a European influence. It's all Italian coffee stuff. I have one of the best coffee shops like right on my block. It's not my most favorite aesthetic coffee shop. It's like I don't live on the most nice street, but it has just incredible coffee. You guys will have to wonder because I'm not going to dox myself and say it's the coffee shop, but there's really great coffee culture. And then also people love going to coffee carts. That's another huge cultural thing here where there's like basically like I guess you call it a food truck, but it's like a coffee food truck that will be parked like, just in some nature area, right? Where like off the highway where there's like like either a park or a natural, some kind of interesting nature thing or an archaeological site. And people will just go there, very, very popular on a Friday or Saturday to go there and just like sit out in nature and drink coffee and eat some pastries from these coffee carts.
It sounds really amazing. I was the reason I brought up the newspaper and book thing is because there was a tradition in back hundreds of years ago of people like one person reading the newspaper out to everybody else, or I was imagining just people like talking about the books they were reading with other people.
There was an amazing movie with Tom Hanks in it. I can't remember the name. Maybe you know it, where he plays one of those professional readers, like in the Wild West.
Yeah, it's not ring any bells, but
Yeah.
somebody in the comments definitely let us know which movie that is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would say, I love the idea of like, imagining, like, these intellectuals sitting at a cafe and debating and reading to each other. I haven't seen that. Tel Aviv is the startup city, right? It's like a startup nation. Most of the time I'm seeing people talking about, startup ideas. If I'm overhearing stuff in cafes, they're talking about, the startup they work for or whatever tech company they're in or started or whatever. But and then there's also like a very big Anglo and Francophone community here in Tel Aviv as well. So there are some cafes where you're going to hear a lot more French, and there's some cafes you're going to hear a lot more English. So there's like different vibes to all these different places.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that there's a significant French scene.
Well, basically, there's since the rise of anti-Semitism in France over the past like 15 years, I would say there's been a major wave of aliyah. Aliyah is the Hebrew term for moving to Israel. So there's been a very large influx of French speaking immigrants.
How do you spell that, Alia?
Aliyah, in English, it would be like Aliah. It means rising. So it's, sort of in Jewish tradition, going back, thousands of years, the term has been used to somebody who moves to Israel because it's a spiritual rise, meaning you move to Israel and you're becoming, you're rising up in spirit. And actually, if you move away from Israel, the term is yirida, which is descending. So it's basically saying, it's just, but in like modern parlance, it's basically just means an immigrant to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there was another set of games I wanted to ask you about down here, and then we've got a lot of Hebrew language books that we're about to get to.
Yeah. So that's so I talked about Magic the Gathering as like my first gaming love. It's still probably my main game that I play, but this is called Arkham Horror, and it is a Lovecraftian based game where you and your other players play as investigators that are investigating sort of paranormal occurrences. And it's set in, like I said, in like this Lovecraftian world in like the 1920s in New England. And each of those games is a different campaign. So each campaign is made up of different scenarios where, you're basically trying to solve this mystery, right? And you're fighting against different monsters and collecting clues. And what's interesting about the game is that it is a cooperative game. So you and your friends are not playing against each other, but rather you're playing together against the game. And the game has a reputation among serious gamers as being brutally, crushingly difficult. Like, think of it like an analog video game, right? You're playing against the game, and the game is trying to kill you. And this game, it's just like, no matter what you do, you are going to get pummeled and pummeled and pummeled by the game. And if you win, you're always sort of winning by the skin of your teeth. And it just makes it really exciting and really fun, and has like a really rich storyline. And each of these campaigns has 8 scenarios. So I play once a week with my friends, and so it takes us 8 weeks, so 2 months to finish one storyline. But by the time you finish one, right, you can replay one that you haven't played, because if you go through all of them, it takes you a couple of years to get through the entire series. And by then you go back and you replay the other ones. And because there's like, think of it like choose your own adventure, right? Different decisions that you make in the game, or different things that happen, or different achievements you make, determine sort of the path that you take toward the end. So we're playing like that orange one, the Feast of Hemlock Vale. That's the one we're playing now. We played that the first time, like, almost 2 years ago. And when we opened the box, we realized that there was a whole set of cards in there that were still in the cellophane, meaning there was a whole chapter of the campaign that we didn't even get to last time, because we took a different intersection in the game. So there's a lot of replay value, and it's really, really fun and immersive. And for anybody that likes, Lovecraftian horror and mystery and challenging games, I will say it's not the easiest game to learn on your own, but there's plenty of YouTube videos. Grab yourself the core set, grab a couple of other nerdy friends, and you guys will have a blast. And I will point out also, the big difference between Magic the Gathering and Arkham Horror is that Magic the Gathering is what's called a collectible card game, or a trading card game, where you buy booster packs from the different sets, and you don't know what you're going to get inside. And you might get, crappy cards that suck, or you might get really rare, valuable cards that are great for the game. And it's both a game and a collectible. With this is what's called a living card game. And what that means is that each box, you know exactly what you're getting inside. There's no mystery. There's no, trading. There's nothing like that. But as you add more, they call it a living card game, because as you add more campaigns, you add to your library of cards. And then, playing, like when the game first came out, you only had X number of cards, but now we've got, 10 new sets, and you can mix and match. So the decks that you build to play, that you played then, you can go back and play the same scenario, the same campaign, with all these new cards, and it gives a totally different flavor and gameplay style.
So is it right that this is the core set here?
Yes. So that's the core set, and then each of the ones that have a name are the different expansions. The core set. Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is the core set for Final Girl.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think Final Girl is usually sold where, I mean, at least I bought it this way. It's sold with the core set and then one of the other expansions. Because with Final Girl, you can't play at all without an expansion. With Arkham, the core set has a mini campaign that, like I said, most campaigns are 8 scenarios. It has a mini campaign with 3 scenarios, and the first 2, or the whole thing effectively being like a playable tutorial.
So I don't know, since you're more of a business guy, maybe you have some thoughts on this. Like, to me, there's a lot of interesting parallels of just novel series, whether it's Harry Potter or various fantasy novels, especially video games where you have like Call of Duty or Halo, and there's always the next kind of, or Grand Theft Auto, there's always the next version of it coming out based on a core idea. And maybe even TV shows. So do you notice any kind of interesting parallels there of, I mean, I've seen this with Hollywood and how, you have it in software as well with sort of subscription service SaaS stuff.
Mhm.
Is there's the obvious critique of like nobody wants to create anything new and they just want to pump out the next Marvel movie or next sequel.
Yeah.
And there's an obvious business reason to do that. But I'm just curious, like, have you thought about those dynamics or see any interesting parallels or other comments on that?
So with gaming, especially in Magic the Gathering, there is right now like a major community-wide conversation and debate around this because Magic was a game, like I said, it was created in 1993 and it grew in popularity all the way through the 90s and early to mid 2000s, but it really was a game for nerds, right? And I think nowadays being a nerd is cool. And I certainly am a self-identifying nerd, proud of it. I mean, I make videos about coin collecting for God's sakes, right? So but it was a game that I think was not sort of in the mainstream, right? Maybe people had heard of it, but it was not in the mainstream. Maybe 10 years ago or so, Wizards of the Coast, the company that produces the game, was acquired by Hasbro. And sort of the Hasbroification of Magic has been a tension point among longtime players like myself. And being as fair as possible, there's pros and cons, right? The pro is that if you care about a game and you want the game to survive, I mean, the game has been thriving for over 30 years now, which is remarkable. But if you want to continue that trend, you need to grow the game. You need to expand the player base. You don't want to gatekeep it so that you're the only people playing it. You want more people to enjoy it. And for that to happen, you need to bring new blood in, and things need to change. You can't keep the game the same way as it was in 1993. So what Hasbro sort of pushed is producing more product. So there's way more sets that come out every year, right? There are way more cards that are being produced, way more products for different formats of the game. And then the most controversial is what they call universes beyond. And this started about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. The company dipped their toes into producing cards that have outside IP. So it started with what's that show called? The Walking Dead. So they produced a special set of, I think, 5 cards that had Walking Dead's characters on it. They weren't sold in regular packs. They were sold direct to consumer on the website, and they were kind of like collectible pieces almost. But it was, it sent shockwaves through the community because Magic has such a rich storyline and a rich world building in and of itself. And like, you're playing with like high fantasy characters, elves and goblins, and then there are legendary creatures, they're like basically the characters of the game that you've come to know and love, etc. And then all of a sudden you're playing with like Rick from The Walking Dead, and it's like a guy on TV, and it's like it sort of takes you out of that. And
Thought you were going to say Rick and Morty.
well, that's the thing. People have made jokes where they're like, what are we going to see next? SpongeBob? And guess what? There was a SpongeBob product that came out. Again, this was for like the direct-to-consumer or like more collectible piece.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, in the last 3 years, they've been doing full sets that are, universes beyond, so crossover IP. And it started with what I consider fine, right? They did a Lord of the Rings set. I think that's great. It's high fantasy. It's a great bridge to different communities, get more people into the game, but it doesn't take you out of it, right? You see like a Hobbit, and it's not like so crazy to see that in a world with orcs and goblins and elves and stuff like that. But then they did Spider-Man, and there's like a card called Bagel and Schmear, literally, and there's a card called Hot Dog Cart, and like there are skylines of Manhattan, and it's just like, what? This doesn't make any sense, and it just feels like a cash grab. And one of the big, I think, positive things is that the sets that are universes beyond that feel like Magic. So, for example, Lord of the Rings, and even they did Avatar: The Last Airbender and Final Fantasy, which are not quite perfect matches, but they still fit into that sort of world of magic, etc., and fantasy. And I think that those work really well. And those were the three highest selling sets of all time. So it's not going anywhere, right? Still a business. And certainly when it's a publicly traded company like Hasbro, which it's called Hasbro, but really it's called Magic the Gathering. Their most recent financial report, which came out just a few weeks ago, shows that Magic is basically their only profitable product, and it represents more than 50% of the entire company. So
That's insane. Wow.
insane. So like Nerf guns and all that stuff that Hasbro makes, it's like a drop in the bucket compared to Magic. So they are basically Magic. So when they have their three biggest sets that are Universes Beyond, it's here to stay. But I just hope they continue on the trend of picking good properties that do match. Like, like Harry Potter would be a good match, right? It's a world of magic, etc. But they did a huge deal with Marvel, and Spider-Man was the first set to come out, and it was one of the biggest failures, both financially and from a gameplay perspective, that they've ever had, which I'm happy about, and most players are happy about. Though they have this big deal with Marvel, and the big set of summer 2026 is going to be the Marvel superheroes set. And I mean, look, I'm not here to yuck anyone else's yum, but I'm not a Marvel fan. I've watched some of the movies, I like them well enough, but I'm not like a fan. And it does kind of like dilute the game, right? Like I don't want to see Iron Man in my game where I'm playing against goblins and giants and elves and wizards. But it's a little bit of a good problem, right? The game is getting more popular, more people like it, more people care about it. It is a collectible card game, so that makes my collection and everybody else who's been playing a long time worth more, financially. And I think overall Magic's in a great place, but I think that they need to, taking from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? They've got to be careful with the properties that they try and integrate, because it's just, they may bring in some new short-term players, but if they alienate the people who have been buying their product for the last 30 years, it might not work out so well.
Yeah, I guess it feels like with Magic the Gathering especially, there might be a fear of sort of something similar to money printing, where
100%.
they can control the rarity of things, and that would actually potentially hurt a collection like yours if they decide to print more of something you have that's rare and make it less rare.
It's really interesting that you say that, because there's two really interesting things to say about that. One is they in the 90s they came out with a set called Chronicles, which was basically a set where they reprinted a bunch of the popular cards, but they reprinted it in such absurd numbers that it tanked the secondary market. And after that debacle, it almost destroyed the game. And after that debacle, they produced what is called the reserved list. And it's a list of the most powerful cards that were printed up to that point, that they sort of made a legal promise to the community that they will never reprint those cards again. So anybody who has them, you're not at risk of having spent, $500 or $1,000 or more on a card and find out that they're just going to reprint it into the ground. The second thing about that is that actually just, I think in the last few weeks, I saw that there is a class action lawsuit that's been brought against Hasbro for pumping out too much product, and also some of the way, I think there's it's a little more complicated than I'm even understanding, but that the way that their distribution model and the amount that they're producing is basically defrauding the buyers, because it's devaluing the cards so quickly. So I think that there has been, even if the lawsuit doesn't go through, even if they lose, I think that there is definitely some pumping of the brakes, or there should be at least, from Hasbro to say, do we want this to be a cash cow that we're going to milk for the next 5 years? or is it going to be something that we continue for the next 30 years? So I know what I would be focusing on if I was the CEO, but it's funny. They didn't ask me to be, so.
The thing that I think is cool about like metals, especially, is I think they're just, even at a symbolic level, I think there's something important about having at least, a few of these, 1 ounce coins, and having a little bit of a tangible sense of things, because it's sort of, you just see the devaluation of the dollar and the devaluation of most currencies. And Ray Dalio has done excellent analysis on the rise and fall of civilizations based on and changing of the reserve currency, and how money printing is just sort of like, it always happens, and like it's almost this unavoidable element of human nature. So once you learn these patterns by studying metals, and gold being sort of the currency, I mean, Dalio just put out a video on like gold is the reserve currency. It is like the currency, and everything else is kind of fruit of that tree, or branching off of it, or attempting to. And so it gives you kind of a sense of these dynamics, that then you recognize those patterns in other fields, and it's always a temptation sort of to once something is valuable, to sort of rehash it, recycle it, devalue it. And yeah.
No, for sure. And I have one friend that's been trying to get me to read Ray Dalio's books for forever, and it's on my list. But it's just such. I mean, I forgot the name for the one that I'm thinking of, probably the one you were just describing. But it's such a tome that like I just have not gotten the courage to to open it up yet. But it's on my list.
Yeah, Ray Dalio has he spent a ton of money creating these 2 videos, animations. I think each is about half an hour long. And so he's got the book Principles, which was what I thought was interesting about it, and nobody really talks about, is that Ray Dalio was very early on building an AI of himself, and, programming his way of thinking into an investment sort of computer. And Principles was sort of part of that, and a way to publish part of that. But it was part of a larger project to sort of reproduce himself in a machine. And Tony Robbins actually did like the first sit down interview with him on one of these books. I think it was Principles. And Tony Robbins was also very early on figuring out how to like take his coaching, personal development coaching, and sort of replicate it in an app or an AI. So those guys were both extremely early on in what we now take for granted with these agents and with these LLMs. But even sort of prior to that, and there's a symbolic element to this AI as well. But that book is, I think, quite different from The Changing World Order, that's 2021, and his How Countries Go Broke, 2025.
That's the one I think that my friend, those two, and particularly the How Countries Go Broke, I think is the one that my friend keeps trying to get me to read.
Yeah, so trying to remember if I've actually read cover to cover all of those. I'm almost positive I read The Changing World Order cover to cover, but the 2 videos do a really good job of giving you, I wouldn't say everything you need to know. Like I think a lot of those books is proving and showing all the evidence of the underlying message, but I think you can get 60 to 80% of the value just from watching those videos. So and they've each got like 10 million views. So anytime I talk to anybody about these kind of things, like I just think he's put out such amazing material, and it's almost like Cassandra syndrome. Like he's sort of like it seems to me he's sort of come to the conclusion, like, because it's such like an elemental part of human nature, there's sort of nothing you can do about it. And like, it's sort of a pessimistic view that he has, where like we can sort of know that it's happening, but it's going to be very difficult to actually avoid, because the temptation is so great.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that makes sense. And he's obviously, I mean, who am I to argue with that? And I certainly don't. But I would say that it's kind of like that with everything in life, though, right? Like, you're always battling against things that continue to sort of haunt humanity, right? Like, it's not like when, even though people, medicine has cured diseases, there's always another disease and another ailment. And obviously coronavirus, right? COVID-19 was like the perfect example of that. Like, no matter how advanced we get, we are always going to be battling. It's an arms race. In medicine, it's an arms race in fighting dangerous ideologies, and there's all sorts of things like that. But we are stuck here on this earth together, and we can choose to either lay down and let the moss grow over us, and that's it, or we can keep fighting to live another day, so that we can sit in those coffee shops and read and enjoy the wonderful things about being a human.
There's another interesting parallel with you and Ray Dalio, which is that he's been interested in China for a very long time. And like, I think he visited every year for like the past 25, 30 years or something. And
Wow.
I think that's part of what made him interested in sort of the Thucydides trap and the rising and falling of world empire. Um, and I heard something in the news about China working on like a gold-backed
Mhm.
uh, renminbi or forget what exactly it's called. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but like
So,
that's part also why I thought the panda is interesting is because like, you could imagine a world where the panda, if China does sort of rise as America falls, the panda would sort of replace at a certain point the American eagle.
yeah, so I would say a couple things about that. One is that China doesn't have a free flowing currency, right? Like, they don't have like a market. And I mean, nobody does, right? Like, we have the Fed that will print money, et cetera, and change interest rates to sort of manipulate the currency. But China has a real stranglehold on the value of their currency, and it's not based on supply and demand and trade. So I don't think they're not gonna do a certainly a gold backed yuan, but there may be elements of it. They may have like some kind of product like that. But there's and again, I'm not an economist, I'm not an expert in this, but um, I do know that they manipulate their currency in a way that I think pegging it to gold would not serve their interests. And also, I think, and I'm curious to hear what Ray Dalio would say, because he's actually an expert. I'm just a guy with with some interest in this space and some interest in China. But I would say that my experience being in China and working in China is that basically every average person, every average American has China wrong. The people that think that China is going to just take over, dominance from the U.S., they just don't understand China at all. And the people that think that you've got nothing to worry about with China and that they're just, all they know how to do is copy American innovation, they also don't know anything about China. China is an incredible society with brilliant people. Personally, my opinion though is that their government structure can only take them so far. Um, Without freedom of expression, freedom of creativity, freedom of dissent, you really can't be on the bleeding edge of anything. And that will definitely hold them back. Who knows what their societal will look like in 100 years, though, right?
Hmm.
Um, there's so much also that we don't really know about China. Um, that I mean, there's even examples I've read that we always sort of take for granted that China has like 1.5 billion people or something. But there's some credible reports that have used AI analysis of let's say like electric usage and other stuff like that to say that there may be, hundreds of millions of people fewer than China's claiming. And then there's always the black box of like what's going on with their economy, et cetera. So I think that China is a very strong adversary of the US for good reason. And they have incredible minds and incredible people there. But on the other hand, uh, I think I like living in a democratic society for a reason. And I think that will, until there's more freedom there, I don't think they'll ever be able to, quote unquote, like replace the US.
The other thing I meant to ask you is there a particular specialty you're planning to go into?
Yeah, I would like to be in emergency medicine.
Okay.
As a medic, I like that's the thing that really drew me to this career and why I really decided I wanted to jump headfirst, at 37 years old into this demanding field is that it really is a mix of like the two things that I care about, one being selfless and one being selfish. The selfless side is like I want to help people and I want to make that my career where I'm like really making an impact and a difference. I'm not saying I'm saving the world, but like you see the impact you make on one person and to their family, that is the whole world. It's amazing. And like, I mean, look, I really am not trying to like self-aggrandize, but like this, it's very rare that I'm doing CPR and it's successful, like in the story that I told earlier. But like, when I went home that day, I was just like, I can't believe it. Like this guy, he was a young guy. He was like in his early 50s, it seemed. And I'm like, this guy's wife and kids, they could have had a very different story if I wasn't there, right? They'd be, preparing a funeral instead of flowers and get well cards at the hospital. And like, I love that. I love that being able to have the knowledge and experience and tools to be able to make that kind of difference. But then on the selfish side, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. I've done skydiving and motorcycles and scuba diving and mountain climbing and all that. And I love all that kind of stuff. And I love the rush of, getting to an emergency site and, triaging it and, getting this gear out and assessing and talking to the bystanders and getting into story and putting all that, like almost like a detective, taking, what the scene looks like, the symptoms, the testimony of the bystanders, and getting all of that into a story that helps, make a treatment. And there's action and there's all that. I love it. It's exciting.
It sounds really fun. So when you started talking about it, I was like, wow, riding around on a motorcycle and it's like, you just like, I'm trying to, I mean, it's sort of like being on call as a doctor, but it's like, it's almost like Batman where you just like, or like Spider-Man where you like, or Superman, he has to like go into the phone booth and then like put on the costume and then like fly somewhere. So it sounds like the perfect sort of adrenaline thing. And,
Yeah.
I don't know, in a different lifetime, I might do that as well. Sounds really fun.
Hey, like my mother said, never say never. Actually, that's a really good segue to something that's on the screen right now.
Yeah.
So my mother is an author, Barbara Finkelstein, and you can see 3 of her books there. And I'll grab one off your shelf.
Yeah.
Well, I'll grab 2 off the shelf. So these are good examples. This is my mom's first novel. She published this right before I was born. That's my mom from I guess like 1987 or so, and it's called Summer Long a Coming. And she didn't publish much in the way of books for a long time after that. She published one other book that's on the shelf, but she spent most of the time working in corporate writing and also writing, for lots of like publications, different news outlets, mostly essays, not news reporting, not like journalism per se, but she recently published a new book that has been really successful, and it is called Flipping Capo. And I'm pretty happy about this one because now that this one was from while I'm alive, it is dedicated to me, her side of it. It's co-written with this awesome guy, Seamus McIlherney. And it is, my mom has been a ghostwriter also for many years. And she was put in touch with this person, Seamus, who originally was going to do a ghostwriting project, but then ended up teaming up with my mom to do a co-writing project. And Seamus is a former FBI agent, that was responsible for bringing down the DeCavalcanti family in New Jersey, which is basically what The Sopranos are based on. So my mom wrote this book with him called Flipping Capo, and it's sort of Capo is like, the key to bringing down this crime family was flipping one of the members, was flipping a made man, and Seamus was able to do that. So this book came out, I think, in October or November of 2025. So it's really brand new. And one of the top, I can't remember his name, one of the top like mafia related YouTube channels and podcasts rated this the best mob book of 2025. So little feather in her cap.
Can you show the back of it?
Yeah. And it's published by Chicago Review Press. And I really love the cover. I think they did a great
It's got
job.
sort of a Madman look to it.
That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. I said it looks like a mix between Mad Men and Marlboro cigarettes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can see
But
that.
and this one, my mom is like the least, like, it's so funny because this is, I would never have imagined a million years that she would write a book about like the mob and violence and all that. And you can see like the flipping capo, the F is a gun, and that was her idea. And I could not believe that. My mom was not like that kind of person. But yeah, I'll definitely plug her book if any of your readers or any of your viewers are interested in reading a fascinating book about the real Sopranos. It's at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, etc. So I'm very proud of her for that also. So yeah, so there's a couple of my mom's books on there, and that's definitely my inspiration as a reader is through my mom. Growing up, it's funny, when I was a kid, your parents say like you'll thank me when you're older, and you never believe it. And when I was a kid, I had a rule. When I was a kid, I thought this was child abuse, but if I wanted to play my PlayStation, I had to read for an hour first. And here's the real abuse. To read for an hour only got me 45 minutes of playing. So I think that was unfair, but it turned me into a reader. I was not a reader as a kid. I was not a reader by choice. I did not enjoy it. I could not focus. And when I was 18 and after high school, when I came to Israel, I started reading a lot. And it just sort of got bitten by the bug, and I've been a reader since. Probably less than much of your audience. I read, I've tracked my stuff on Goodreads, and I read like probably between like 20 and 25 books a year. So like a book like every 2 weeks. But like, I watched your video on that guy that's doing his 40-year project, and he reads a book a week, and he's reading serious literature. And, I look at myself and I'm just like, I think of myself as a reader, but like, maybe compared to like the average American that's, only on TikTok and reading the back of a cereal box. But, to some of these guys that you're interviewing, I'm in awe of them.
I don't know. I know. So I actually worked with medical school students on a course that I taught several years ago on how to prepare for the USMLE Step 1. And I got this inspiration from Tiger Woods, who decided to he wanted like the most difficult training of any sport or any thing out there. And so he went and trained with the Navy SEALs, and he wanted to go through their training and see what it was like and see if he could bring something back to golf. And I like that idea of going into a very different field and trying to do what they do. And it's even become sort of I've noticed recently it's become sort of a trope on YouTube of some of these mega viral people. What they'll do is I'm going to go train with these people for the big thing right now is Diamond Gym. It's the most dangerous gym ever. And all the major fitness guys are going to Diamond Gym to experience this brutal form of working out. So anyways, I decided what's the most difficult studying that you can do, most difficult intellectual path you could take. And it really seemed that medical school was that. And so I wanted to, and my parents had wanted me to become a doctor amongst, do the sort of doctor lawyer thing. And so when I took a different path outside of higher ed, I always thought, what if I had followed that path? And so it's cool to work with um, med students who are preparing for the USMLE. And one of them actually was a woman preparing to be a surgeon who lived in Israel. And
Wow.
I was just shocked by, the Anki decks and the Reddit community
Mm.
and the practice questions, question banks, and all that stuff. Like, it's just so intense. And I think even people with, the largest libraries that I've toured, I don't know that most of them they definitely wouldn't enjoy that experience. And I don't know if they would even, they would possibly say med school is much more intense and difficult. Cause I think of it as like, and I probably read this somewhere on Reddit, but like the first 2 years of med school are sort of like Hell Week of like the Navy SEALs Hell Week, where it's I think a week or 10 days or something where they maybe sleep for 4 hours and they're just constantly on the run and they're weeding people out.
Yeah.
I think they weed like 80 or 90% of people out actually, but I've heard, and I now describe it as med school is like 2 years of that. And so it's just a grinder and it's such an information overload. Most
Yeah.
people just never experience that. So I think what you're doing, that's part of what just shocked me so much is like, that's such an intense thing to do. And you must really have a love for it. And I think that's maybe what it takes is you have to, at least for some people, like you'd have to have something really driving you emotionally that where you would persevere through that.
Yeah, I think that it's a mix of things. I think you're giving me a little too much credit, but I appreciate it anyway. In here, it's actually a little bit the opposite. They do the weeding first. This exam, which is like I keep calling it like the Israeli MCAT, but it's considered a lot harder than the MCAT, and it's brutal. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Maybe I'm only saying that now because I'm in it now, but it definitely feels that way. And the idea is that if you get in after like passing this test, the attrition rate within medical school is very, very low here. Meaning if you can spend the, 5-6 months of studying like it's your full-time job to prepare for this, then and you're at the top of your class. It's graded on a curve. So essentially, you're it's not like there's a passing number. It's not like passing the bar. Or actually, I'm not sure how the bar works, but like how I imagine it works is you have to get a certain score and you pass. Here, you have to be like in the top X percentile of the cohort that you take the test with to get in. So it's brutally difficult. Essentially, the way the test is structured is in some ways it's easier than the MCAT, but the breadth is what makes it harder. It's called the knowledge test because it generally is knowledge, meaning they're not really out there to trick you. It's just there are 3 textbooks that, not including index or table of contents, it's about 8,000 pages of information, and they can take questions from anywhere in those 8,000 pages. If there's a little inset with an example and there's a protein called, BCL2, that can be on the exam and they can ask you about it, and they can ask you about its properties. What charge does it have? Is it hydrophobic? Is it hydrophilic? All these different things. And it's just a tremendous amount of material. I've never experienced anything like that. And, talking about books, if you look at my Goodreads, it's like, 20 books. I have it divided by year. It's like 20 books, 22, 25, 19. And then you get to 2025 and it goes to 7. I just checked it before I got on this video. And it's just, you're studying all day. The last thing you want to do, even though like I love to sit at a cafe or curl up in bed at the end of the day and read, honestly, I finished studying. I just want to turn on the TV. I want to scroll on my phone like a zombie, because it's extremely intense. But I will say it's also really interesting. Like, yeah, do I do I enjoy memorizing like, the different, these random proteins, that are just literally a string of letters and numbers? No. But when you're looking at systems and you're seeing how things work, it is so fascinating. Have you ever been scuba diving?
No.
So I've gone scuba diving a bunch of times, and I remember the first time I went, you can't describe it to somebody who hasn't gone because it is a totally different world and a totally different experience. And it's like showing someone a picture of a viewpoint on the top of a hike, on the top of a mountain versus being there and seeing it yourself. And it's like scuba diving, right? Like you're like, I can't believe that this is how it works. You're just open to a whole new world and of wonder and excitement. And yeah, then I go back and that passes, and now I'm stuck struggling through, this dense textbook. But it does keep me going, that it is really, really interesting. And, that it is a means to an end, right? In order to be a doctor, I need to get into medical school.
There was a comment actually on the video that you commented on, and that's how I discovered you, where somebody said like, how many books did this guy read? And then somebody commented on that saying like, that's the most mid-wit thing you can ask, is like, how many books? And, most people who teach the kind of accelerated learning stuff, which is maybe my core expertise, whether it's memory skills or speed reading, which I just really treat as reading, note-taking, etc. Most of them haven't had exposure to the medical school system and how intense it is. And I think of it as sort of equivalent to special forces, just in terms of that intensity and that kind of seriousness of effort and study. And it does really force you to think about like, what does it mean to read a book? Because if you take the average book that you read 10 years ago, you don't retain much of it. And that's so much different from, I have these 8,000 pages, or I have this 2,000 page textbook. And like, you'll never look at a 2,000 page textbook if you're not in medical school or in some like hard science or engineering thing. So, maybe Norton Anthology is kind of like that, but the concept of actually memorizing that amount of information and reading and rereading and like knowing that like at the back of your hand, that's such a rare type of reading. And that really shows you, like, talking about reading a book, there's so many levels to it. And most people never even reach that level with a single book of like actually memorizing a single book. Most people never do that.
I am definitely in terms of literature, I am definitely a casual reader, right? Like my mom, has a master's in 17th century English literature that she got, as an adult for fun, right? And she's an author, and her whole life is steeped in literature. She's studied literature, right? I took some college classes, like I took the American novel, right? I took some classes, but I've never dissected Milton, like my mom, right? I've never really studied. I'm a pretty, I read the book. I'm not saying that I read only, like fluff literature, right? I read some important books, and I also read some, more academic nonfiction, especially when it comes to like Jewish history or Israel history. But I'm like, I'm not a troglodyte, but I'm not far from it.
What is a troglodyte?
I think it's like a cave dweller.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
go
yeah, go ahead.
There was one other term you used earlier, carapace, and I had to look that up. It's I'm curious what your definition is, and I'll maybe add.
I think it's like the hard shell on like a creature, like a turtle or like an armadillo or something.
Yeah. So that's what, there's sort of two senses when I looked it up. That's the primary sense, and then the secondary is that using that metaphorically as like, and I think that's where I've encountered it, because I definitely heard it before, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was, and it is sort of that metaphor of like a protective shell.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I'm going to show you another book.
Yeah.
I'll- um, let me see if I have the English one also. I think I don't. I think I only have the Hebrew versions, but it's interesting that you said that medical school, is like the special forces. So these are two books in Hebrew, by Guy M. That's the author. This one is called Me'efis Lemea, which means from 0 to 100, which would be like in American terms, like 0 to 60, but we use kilometers per hour, so 0 to 100. And then this is called Lo Mekhakim L'Kriya, which means like you don't wait to be called, right? I'm sure there's a more idiomatic translation, but this is the crossroads of what you just described. He is a former member, or also a reservist, for a unit in the Israeli army called 669. And the 669 unit is, I think what the equivalent in the US, I think they're called PJs, which is like paramedic jumpers. So they're paramedics that are also commandos. So it's like, imagine if the Navy SEALs had a special division. Maybe they do actually. I actually don't know. Imagine they had a special division of paramedics. So they are trained. They're jumping out of helicopters into the ocean, swimming miles and miles, and they're like the tough commandos. But their primary mission is not commandoing. Their primary mission is going into war zones and extracting injured civilians and soldiers. And he, sort of writes about his experience. The first book is writing about his experience from being, an 18-year-old that gets drafted to getting into this special unit. It's considered one of the top 3 units, and it's like, in the U.S. you have like the Green Berets and like the Navy SEALs, and like this is like that for Israel. It's in like one of the top 3, commando units.
It's a tier 1.
Yeah, exactly. And he talks about, and he writes just about his experience from, being an 18-year-old through his training, through his service, and it's fascinating. And then he wrote a second book, sort of detailing his experience on October 7th. And he was one of the first responders there. And that's why it says you don't wait to be called. Because on October 7th, this was such a unexpected surprise attack that, the army didn't mobilize like it normally would, right? It's not like they're fighting a traditional army where they're sending forces, with, a real chain of command. So he gets a call from his, he was with his fiance, on a day off, and he gets woken up by a phone call from his commander saying, this is what's going on. We don't really understand the scope, but like, you got to get down there. And like, he gets there, and because there were so many different kibbutzim, so many different communities that were being attacked, he just took a few other guys and they went to one of them, and he was in charge all of a sudden. And between, that's when like being the commando and the medic at the same time really sort of tested its thing. And you read about it, it's unimaginable. And then there's a scene I just remember in it where a civilian doctor is on a helicopter and he's like loading people on, and the doctor sort of like really rose to the occasion and like kicked into action, was able to deal with this. Nothing went according to protocol. Like my unit of medics in that area also went in, and they were, we're trained for mass casualty, but no one can train you for something that's never happened before, in real life. And, I mean, there were people, you'd have six patients in one ambulance, you'd be taking people on the back of their motorcycle, like all sorts of crazy stuff. I wasn't there. I was, doing normal, I've responded to plenty crazy stuff, but, I don't want to do any stolen valor. I was not there.
But if you were in the area, you would have been called to that.
Yeah, but I will say that I don't know what I would have done. Like, there's a great, and it's in Hebrew, so most people probably wouldn't watch it, but there's a great documentary on YouTube about these two medics from United Hatzalah from my organization called Ellie and Ellie. They're two guys named Ellie, and they went in all day driving back and forth, extracting civilians and getting them to hospitals all day under fire. And they were told explicitly by our dispatch, do not go in. You are not allowed to go in. You are, forbidden from going in. You will die if you go in. I think I would have listened. I don't know if I would have done it. And I'm happy that it was them and not me, because they saved countless lives. So it really is, it's like an unbelievable thing. And these books that I read of this guy, he's a young guy. He just finished medical school now. He's a resident. So, he definitely has the experience of being both a commando and a doctor. And I know that it is, obviously in very different ways, they have similar intensities. However, medical school doesn't usually come with PTSD.
I don't know about that. There's a lot of articles now about like the trauma and like overwork and burnout. So it does seem in the US or with the USMLE, they've made it pass fail. It's funny, like the year that I did that course, maybe 2 years later, they changed step 1 to pass fail. And so it kind of killed a lot of the motivation for excellence, because it used to be like the quality of the residency and getting, if you want to be a dermatologist or something, or a more selective specialty, you really wanted that like really high score on that test. And when it's pass fail, there isn't the motivation for that, because you're just sort of passing the bar to an extent.
Yeah. And if you spend enough time in school, sometimes, with like, you just have to make a cost benefit analysis, and it's like, you don't need to be the best when it's pass fail, and you can use your energies elsewhere if you just study enough to pass. So I think you're right. I think it definitely kills motivation. I know that if I didn't I would be not studying as intensely as I am now, if I knew that I just needed to pass a specific number as opposed to be in the top, 30% or so.
And the other thing, working with these med students is that I was saying like, we should organize your information so that you're not just studying this, but like you're going to want to have this in your knowledge system after this test. And they were telling me, actually, nobody thinks most of this information is important. I'm not going to ever look at this again after I pass this test. So there was also an element of like, this is just weeding people out, and it's not even that important to learn it. And that's another soul-sucking element of it, is that like you sort of know in the back of your head, everybody knows this is sort of a game and there's a fakeness to it, and that's not that fun.
That's what it is here too. And I tell my friends, they crack up at this, that when I was finishing up the post-bac, my neighbor is the head of pediatric pulmonology at one of the big hospitals in Tel Aviv. And she was asking me, she goes, "Oh, so what exams do you have left?" And I said, "I have microbiology and molecular biology left, and then I'm done." And she goes, "Oh, micro, that's the one with bacteria and everything." She goes, "Molecular, what is that again?" And it's like, and all my friends that are doctors are just like, "Yeah, like you," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you must need some of these. Like, you could probably learn everything you need from like the hard science perspective in like one semester, and everything else is just like completely unnecessary for practicing in the field." I know all of the different collagens. There's like 12 different collagens in the body, and I have to know that collagen 1 is associated with osteogenesis imperfecta. Collagen 2 is associated with dwarfism. Collagen 3 has to do with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but vascular, and collagen, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yes, you will need maybe to treat some of these ailments, throughout your career, but like, and I think this is probably true in a broader sense about education, where we're like in this, transition period, AI. And honestly, frankly, forget AI, just like Google, right? Like, you don't need to know all of this this stuff by heart, like the things that are just, completely informational, right? Like, I think it's important to know all the systems and understand interactions. And I think like biochemistry, I think, is really important, because you can't understand how medication works or how a lot of these ailments work without understanding the basic chemistry. But like memorizing the different types of collagen in the body, like those are things that you can look up. And as a coin guy, right? Like I even talked about, like, and I think that this is probably true about any expertise. Expertise is not knowing every detail about the topic. It's knowing how to learn about the topic. Like no English professor would ever say, yep, I know books. Like I know all of books, right? It would say, I know how to read. I know how to read a book critically. I know how to identify themes and trends and literary style. But like, you can apply those frameworks to any book or to any piece of literature, or any piece of writing. Expertise is like having a foundation, but also knowing how to investigate further in that field. And I think that, just generally with education, the rote memorization is really kind of pointless at this point.
I did want to, just two things. One is, you mentioned pulmonologist earlier, and for people unfamiliar, that's the specialist in the respiratory system, lungs, airways, etc. And then I looked up the guy that I was thinking of, who's kind of similar. That book that you mentioned about October 7th, is there an English version of that?
Yes, it just came out. I don't remember the title. You know what? Let me take a quick peek.
Yeah, while you're looking that up, because I want to just give the audience some information about this guy. So he's been on a number of the big podcasts. And on YouTube, his name is Dr. Johnny Kim, Jonny, born 1984. He's widely cited as one of the most credentialed individuals in the U.S. military academic sphere. U.S. Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 3, combat deployments in Iraq, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Combat V, for valor. Physician MD from Harvard Medical School, 2016. Residency in emergency medicine at Mass General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital. And Mass General is sort of an iconic. There was a TV show about it even. And he was also an astronaut, so selected in 2017 as part of NASA Astronaut Group 22.
Yeah, that's one of those guys that you can list the things he hasn't accomplished quicker, list his accomplishments. That's incredible. This is the book.
Let me full screen for a sec.
Sure. This is the book, Full Throttle, by Guy M. Because he is a current an active reservist, and it's a special unit. They don't publish his last name. But you can look it up. Guy M. Full Throttle. It is absolutely incredible. It's only marred by the fact that it is true and so fresh that you get into it and you're just reading about this like incredible action story. And then you remember, oh my God, this is like right now, and this is real and horrible. But definitely worth the read for sure.
I also wanted to, if it's not too personal, I'm curious what your dad's background is.
Yeah, so my dad, he's a really interesting guy. I think a lot of when I talked about sort of the marginal hour versus the marginal dollar, I think I got a lot of that from him. I'm very much a product of both my parents, but in very different ways. They're very different from each other. And I'd like to believe, taken the best of their qualities, though I know I've also taken some of the worst of their qualities. But my dad was in business, in like sales mostly, for most of my childhood and most of his like younger years. And then he got involved in like community activism and local politics. And it got to the point where people were just like, why don't you run? So he ran for city council in White Plains, New York, and he won and became a city councilman there, and he was in the papers. He was like written up he was described often as like a maverick, sometimes less flatteringly as a Republicrat. because he was always like, I'm an American first. I'm a registered Democrat, but I will work on any good idea from either side of the aisle. And unfortunately, in American politics, that's not really looked at, well from the establishment. So there's just a fascinating story that, I mean, tragic, but fascinating story just of his political career. Basically, he ended up running for mayor, and there was a major, I guess, campaign against him from within the Board of Elections, because in New York, it's one of the few states where a candidate can be backed both by the Republican and Democratic Party, and his opponent, Adam Bradley, was a very like powerful individual, and he had the nomination of both the Republican and Democrat Party. And my dad was thrown off the ballot after the Board of Elections found some technicality. They hadn't signed a document in time, even though he was a sitting councilman and the only opposition. And they basically, he went to court, was put back on the ballot, and then they sued again and appealed that to have him thrown off the ballot so there'd be one candidate. And my dad ran as a write-in campaign, and he ended up getting 18% of the vote as a write-in in a city of 50,000. And he lost. But there was also other like crazy things. The mayor, his opponent who won, shortly after winning, it was leaked that he had, emails had been leaked about, detailing years and years, decades of physical and sexual abuse against his wife. And he was ultimately ousted, and then brought up on ethics charges after he was forced to move out and had a restraining order against his family. He created a new position in City Hall for his new landlord, a 6-figure salary. So he also was brought up on 5 ethics charges. And that was kind of the end of my dad's political career. And it went so there was also Board of Elections meddling, and it went to the appellate court in New York, which is the highest state court. So really fascinating. My dad is a very principled man, duty-driven man, and also very fun and funny. And after his political career, he did a short stint as a real estate agent. It's like, what do you do after you know everybody in the city? Become a real estate agent. But he didn't really enjoy that, and then retired. And now he just does whatever he wants. He travels a lot. He's always been a big traveler. I remember in my kindergarten class, we were learning about Egypt. So he came and talked about his trips to Egypt, in the early 80s. He was like a backpacker, in the 70s and 80s before it was like a huge industry, going to all these far-flung places in Nepal and, South America and all over the world. And that's kind of what got me bitten by the travel bug. And probably, honestly, my sense of duty also probably comes from him.
That's cool. So we've got your mother's book here. Are there any others here? And then we can maybe we can do the books here that are on their side, and then we can go to the main set of books.
Sure. So the James Joyce book, Dubliners, is over there because my mom has a good friend that is a Joyce expert. He's a professor that focuses entirely on Joyce, and I think he's at Fordham University. I won't say his name because I don't know if he would want to be talked about online, but in any case, he's a professor and a researcher on Joyce. And when I was visiting my mom, we went to dinner at their house, and I looked at at one of his bookshelves, and he just has like an entire bookshelf like behind me, but all, obviously James Joyce's books and different versions of it, a different, different editions, but also like every academic piece ever published on Joyce, including some of his own. And I was just like, that's a pretty big hole in my literary knowledge. I think I gotta read something. And like, he was really funny because he was just like, like I was like, should I read Finnegan's Wake, or should I read? And he's like, or should I read Ulysses? And he's like, no. He's like, you need to like learn those. He goes, you're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be interesting. It's just going to drive you nuts. Like, if you want to take a course on that and learn it, he's like, nobody reads that. Like, nobody reads that. He was very flippant about it and funny. And he said, read Dubliners. It's great. It's fun. You'll enjoy it. But you don't need to read any of the heavy lifting stuff. So I still haven't read it yet. That's on my list. The Isaac Bashevis Singer book, I've read other stuff of his, but I haven't read this, nor The Plot Against America, but both of those I got off the street. That's another amazing Tel Aviv cultural oddity. There's like a citywide unofficial book exchange. Every park bench that you go to, people will bring books and just leave books, and it's like take one, leave one kind of thing. And there's just books everywhere. And then even the city set up at like certain parks and like at the train stations, bookshelves where you can just put books and take books and, entirely for free. So I saw those two, and those are two books that I wanted to read. So I grabbed those. The only one I've read of these is The Man Who Broke into Auschwitz. There are two books. Sorry, excuse me. I did not read that one yet either. There's another book on my shelf called The Escape Artist, which is about the only people to successfully ever escape Auschwitz. And my dad was reading The Man Who Broke into Auschwitz at the same time, which was kind of like funny that I'm reading about an escape and he's reading about breaking in. So he gave me that when he finished it. And then I think the other books that are on their side, so all the books that are on their side are the ones that I have not read yet. The Felicia's Journey and The Razor's Edge, those are two books that I know nothing about, but there's a local used bookstore that I love, and the guy who runs it, he's owned the store. It's called Halpers. He's owned that store for like 30 years. He's also an Ole. He grew up in New Jersey, moved to Israel in the 70s, and opened this bookstore. And it's like one of these, it's like a real reader's used bookstore. It's just like, twists and turns of piles of books everywhere. It has that used bookstore smell. And like he's there and you can just like talk shop with him and talk about books. And he has like an autograph book of like every author that's ever come and signed it. And it's just like fun. It's just a great store. So I told him some of the books that I like, and he recommended these two to me. So I've grabbed them. And once I finish my exam in a month, I will hopefully crack into them. And then I don't know what that Borderlands book is. I think I must have found that on the street also. And then I think everything in that first row I have read. On the right-hand side, you have the Hebrew books. And on the left-hand side, like I said, I've done a very poor job of organizing. But let's see. Yeah, so those are two of my mom's books over there, where you see Summer Learner Coming and First Year of Nursing. And then next to that is Man's Search for Meaning, which is Viktor Frankl's, like, probably one of the most famous, like, philosophy, psychology books ever written. I actually didn't love it, but I think that's only because his ideas have become so accepted in society, and they've pervaded like into just like the general thought, like the general society of Western thought, that like you're like, oh well, this isn't original, but it's only not original because he wrote it, and then it's diffused into everyday sort of belief systems and philosophy.
That's interesting you say that, because I've had a similar opinion on it, and I just see so many people where it's like their top 5 book.
Yeah.
And when I read it, it just didn't seem like there was anything earth-shattering there. And it seems kind of like it's more about asking questions than necessarily providing a specific answer. So I always kind of wondered why do so many people list it so highly? But one of those things.
Yeah. And then I have a couple books on Israel and the one Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor is really interesting. It's by what's his name? Now I'm blanking on his name. Yossi Klein Halevi. I always say Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote *Sapiens*, which is right next to it, just because it's like two Israeli YH names, and a triple name. So anyway, he writes a lot of really interesting stuff about Israel and about Israeli history, Israeli philosophy, and also I'd say like, modern Israeli society and like the conflict at large. And this was really interesting. He published this book called Letters to My Palestinian Neighbors because where he lives, he can see off into the distance behind the green line of Palestinian town. And, it talks about how he always wonders, like who are these people on the other side, right? So this was kind of an earth-shattering book because he published it and then had it translated into Arabic and offered it for free in Arabic. And it was basically, it's a coexistence book essentially, but it's an attempt to connect, on a human level to the people that are sort of on the other side of this, infamous conflict. So it was just interesting to read it, especially in the context of living here.
Yeah.
*Sapiens*, I don't think we have to talk about that. It's probably on everybody's shelf, right?
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. I learned a lot from it, but I don't remember any of it. The next one, called *Fuck America*, is a real gem. This author is this is something you've probably never seen, and probably none of your
Yep.
viewers have. It's an author named Edgar Hilsenrath, and he is fantastic. I was exposed to him through my French ex-girlfriend who is doing a PhD in comparative literature, and this was one of the authors she was focusing on. And I read his most famous book called The Nazi and the Barber, and it is absolutely incredible. One of the best books I've ever read. So then I read another one, which is called *Fuck America*. It's about an immigrant to America, and I think in like the 1930s or 40s. I don't remember exactly, but I read it a few years ago. But it's funny, it's poignant, it's extremely well written, and like it's like one of these few. I mean, I liked The Nazi and the Barber way more than *Fuck America*. I think there's an alternate title. I think *Fuck America* is like the European published title. I think it might have been written in German originally. I can't remember, honestly. I think the other one is called like *Dear Bronsky*. I think that's like the alternate title for like the American audience.
There's I see it listed here as the subtitle, Bronsky's Confession.
Yeah, maybe that was it. But also it's excellent. But if you're gonna take a chance on something that you've never read, never heard of, *The Nazi and the Barber* by Edgar Hilsenrath, like phenomenal, really, really phenomenal.
I just want to spell his last name for people who are going to look it up. It's
Sure.
Hilsenrath.
Yeah. And then *The Bibliomaniacs* is, you can see Halper. I just mentioned Halper's bookstore. This is his book about his experience and the odd cast of characters who were the customers to his used bookstore over the years. Is it like a great piece of literature? No, but when you're a customer there and the guy, I enjoyed reading it. I really enjoyed reading it. *Crisis of Islam* by Bernard Lewis. Just kind of like one of these, like, he's a well-known professor of Middle Eastern studies. This book came out like 20 years ago. It's interesting, but like, I think there's so much has changed in the Middle East and in the world in the last 20 years that it's like maybe a little outdated. *The Sabbath* is like one of the seminal works of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. He's like a great American Jewish thought leader. He famously is like one of the guys that's arm in arm with Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement. So that's a really great one, and it's short. So for like your commenter that said, what did he call it? He said,
Asking how many books somebody has read is the most midwit thing.
midwit. Yeah, I'm like a proud midwit. I know it's not cool to count the number of books you read, and just like it's not cool to count the number of countries you've been to, but I can't help it.
Yeah.
And like when I'm reading, because I always have a goal of reading my age. I've never accomplished it in a year, I mean. I've never accomplished it, but sometimes when I get towards the end of the year, I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'll read Stephen King's The Body. That's the short one, and try and cram one in. But like sometimes doing something of value, even if it's for the wrong reason, can still be good, right? Like, I think there's value in reading Pulp Fiction, like or whatever you would call it, like Stephen King. I think there's value in it, and if it also gives me that extra notch on my belt, so be it.
There's actually a funny story with Stephen King in particular. When he was in school, there was a challenge. Everybody had to memorize one verse of the Bible. And so the shortest verse of the Bible is Jesus wept. And so that's the one that he memorized. And apparently, I brought that up with my Jason Johnston. We did the 36-hour tour of his pastor theology library. And he had some story about that also. So apparently it's sort of somewhat of a joke about, just memorization and
Yeah. He's incredible. I mean, he's not looked at as like, a writer of serious literature, but he's probably one of the most prolific writers like ever. And he also, I mean, have you ever read his book on writing?
no, but I've seen it. Actually, I have looked at pieces of it because I did spend a little bit of time on, I try to be prolific myself. And so I study other prolific people and I looked into, what I remember about that book is that most of it isn't like just like the actual practical part of it is like 10 pages or something,
Yeah.
but I could be wrong about that.
It is, but it's mostly like, I mean, I read it and it was just inspiring to me because it
Yeah.
shows like what hard work and dedication and discipline can do. I mean, the thing that always sticks out in my mind is like when he was a young teenager, he was like 12, 13 years old, and he was writing short stories and sending them into these literary magazines. And he had a big nail over his bed that he would put the rejection letters on, hundreds of rejection letters.
Wow.
And it's like, it's like the what's that quote? I think the quote is attributed to Steve Martin, where he's like, "It took me 10 years to become an overnight success."
Mm.
And like that's like the perfect example. You don't see that behind the scenes, right? He talks about it when the rights to Carrie were sold for like the like trade paperback edition. He was living in a trailer, like. It's like the amount of effort that he put in to honing his craft is like unparalleled. So the inspiring part of on writing is amazing. I agree. I don't think I became a better writer because of it. Um, and then the other books on this shelf, The Girl Next Door, Jack Ketchum, that is a book I don't recommend. And I say that because it's the only book I've ever read that I think I'm worse off for having read. It doesn't mean I would go back and change it. I love reading horror. I'm a big horror fan, both movies and books. And it is so disturbing. It is the most disturbing thing I've ever consumed, ever. And I don't think I'm better off having read it. But that may get people to be interested in it. I don't know.
Could you,
But
I mean, I did notice that with the games, it seems that you do have an interest in horror, and I'm curious, like, why is that? What's interesting about it?
I think that it's like a broad question. I don't like that. I think you can ask for any, like in general, like humanity, like why, like my friends who don't like horror movies, they're like, I don't like, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to put yourself in why would you want to like spend your leisure time being uncomfortable and scared? Right. And I don't have a good answer.
Let me give you, I don't watch a ton of horror, but like I always thought the Saw movies were interesting. And
Yeah.
I thought about why was I interested in them, and I think why just were they popular in general in the zeitgeist. And I think there's an element of it sort of forces you to confront these sort of ethical questions about what would you do in this situation, and the fact that the Saw guy who creates these scenarios is sort of trying to force people into these ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
That's it's almost like the story of Job, of, God and the devil are putting this guy into a pressure cooker and taking everything away from him and seeing how he reacts. And that's um, and the three friends come and they all discuss it, or the two friends. And so there's this, like, it's sort of a parable to get you to think about these questions. And I don't know, that's just an example of,
I always try and compare it to hot sauce. Like,
hmm.
I love hot sauce too, and like theoretically, it's something that like your body's telling you no, right? Like theoretically, you shouldn't like it, but you do, and lots of people do. And I was exposed to horror movies as a kid with my dad. I didn't. My mom was more careful about what kind of movies and TV I consumed. My dad was not at all. So I would be with him and watch horror movies, from when I was like really a little kid. And we just love it. My dad was into it, so he got me into it, and I've just always liked it. I don't really know why. I think maybe it's the adrenaline junkie stuff as well. Maybe it's all part of the same basket of genes.
I think maybe there's something about, like, exploring the limits, and there's something about maybe it could even be sort of a testosterone thing of being, because I think with entrepreneurs, like, you have that appetite for risk that maybe is above normal, and it maybe goes back to, like, the hunter-gatherer days, and just like who wants to go out into the wilderness, who wants to take that extra risk. So
Yeah, very possible.
I looked up one other quote that you reminded me of with that Stephen King, because I didn't remember that one about the nail, and it's a Michael Jordan quote. I missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. And some of these other books, Jumpo Lahiri, I've read. So The Namesake is incredible. It's literary fiction. And then there was another one of her books that I'm trying to remember what it was called. The other one is a collection of short stories that I really, really liked as well. Really incredible author. Murakami is probably my favorite author. Nope, sorry. Barbara Finkelstein is my favorite author. No, but Murakami is probably my favorite author. Norwegian Wood, I read it when I was like 20, and I was just like floored by it. Every one of his books that I've read. I mean, I haven't even read his whole oeuvre, or whatever you would call it.
No.
But I've probably read 6 or 7, and I love it. I think he captures the mindset and feeling of being a man in your mid-30s better than anything, better than I could even articulate about myself. I read a lot of it when I was in my 20s, but it just really captures that feeling of what it's like so well, and then it's wrapped up in just these interesting stories with magical realism, and I just love it.
You got Fight Club here. That's maybe somewhat similar.
Yeah, I didn't love it. I think maybe it's because I'd seen the movie several times, and I've never been a huge fan of the movie. I liked it. It's good. It's just me. Maybe it's also just my like contrarian side being like it's too popular, so I have to not like it. I think maybe that's part of it from when I was like a teenager, when like everyone was obsessed with it. I liked it, but I think it's like that much better than anything else I've ever read or watched? No. Um, the Binding by Izzy Rinsky, loved it. He has a couple of books. Izzy Rinsky is another author who's a friend of mine, and he's incredible. And I don't know why his books are not more popular. Like, he's not like a household name, obviously. He's published, I think, four novels. And my favorite of his is called Palindrome. It's mystery, horror, kind of a noir, and the dialogue is so good and so tight. I read it first because I met him through friends, and I was like, oh, that's cool. He's an author. Like, I'd be down to read one of his books. And I read it in one sitting. I read it. I sat on my couch and I finished at like 2 a.m. I could not put it down. And I was shocked because I really read it almost as like a favor, like a touch point, being like, all right, he's a guy who's friends with some of my good friends. I'll read it. And, why not? And then I immediately texted him and I'm like, hey, I know we just met, but I am obsessed with your book. I'm going to read the other ones. And then I read the other 2 or 3. And I am proud to say that his most recent book, which is not out yet, I'm an early reader, and I will be in the acknowledgement section. But really great. These books, these 4 that you can see above that, are also amazing. Why We Sleep, I thought was incredibly boring, and I did not enjoy reading it, but the information was incredible. It's by Matthew Walker. He's like the head of like the Harvard Sleep Center or something. He's a sleep scientist. And I think the book is kind of boring, and it's written like very academically, but it's fascinating. And it did make me change my habits. So if a book can get you to change things in your life, I mean, it's got to be pretty great.
What'd you change?
It's a work in progress, but I'm really trying to put my phone away, before bedtime, and not look at screens, and also just value the full 8 hours, and really focus on that. Because, I mean, his point in the book is basically that like a lot of chronic illnesses, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, etc., a lot of them have a much, much bigger linkage to sleep than sort of is talked about in the mainstream, where basically everything is diet and exercise focused. But cortisol levels, stress levels, like basically if you get your full 8 hours, everything in your life gets better. I'm not there yet, but it definitely has at least given me a goalpost to work towards. Gilead, have you read that? That's a pretty popular one.
No.
It's really, really good. I read it a few years ago, so I'm trying to remember exactly, but it's basically like a older father writing a letter to his young son before he dies. Right, the guy's he's dying, and he had a child as an old man, and he's writing this sort of like letter to his son, and it goes through like sort of rambling stories about his own childhood and his grandfather, and it takes place like in middle America, and it's some of the best writing I've ever read. And it's one of those times where it's like, I can't believe a woman wrote this, because it's in the voice of a man. And it's like, when you read a book that's like a woman in the voice of a man, and a man in the voice of a woman, you're just like, how did you get that so perfect? It's just all the more impressive. That one I think is really well known and popular. And then The Memory Monster is
I was thinking of The Handmaid's Tale with Gilead.
Oh, yeah. So it's same name, nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I read The Handmaid's Tale also, and I really like that. So that proves that there are mainstream things that I do like. I like Harry Potter too. I like all sorts of mainstream stuff. The Memory Monster is a book by an Israeli author called Yishai Saradid. This was given to me as a gift. That's why I read it in English, even though it was written in Hebrew. And I had never heard of the author before. And it's basically, the structure of the book is written as the whole book is one long open letter to the director of Yad Vashem, which is the National Israel Holocaust Research Center, Museum, and Memorial in Jerusalem. And it's a novel, and it's written from the perspective of a tour guide, an Israeli tour guide that takes groups of Israeli tourists to the concentration camps in Europe. And it's basically him writing a letter to the director of Yad Vashem, and you basically read along watching, his descent into madness. And it's just excellent, really excellent. So since then, I've read two of his other books in Hebrew, which you can see are the two ones with the little fish symbols, the little red fish symbols on the left. So one is called Hashlishi, and one is called Minatzachat. And I'm not sure if they're in English, if they're published in English, but I suspect they are, or at least one of them is. Hashlishi means the third, and it is a lot of his books are written in with interesting structural choices. Like the Memory Monster is written as a letter, and Hashlishi is written as a found diary, almost kind of the Blair Witch Project was a fake found footage film, and this is a found diary, and it's essentially it's a dystopian future where the Arab nations get the nuclear bomb, and they bomb Israel's two main port cities, Tel Aviv and Haifa, and it basically causes a chain reaction, diplomatic chain reaction or geopolitical chain reaction, which gets Israel to close its society, and a strong leader, like a demagogue, rises up and claims to be the new high priest, and reestablishes Hashlishi, meaning the third, reestablishes the third temple in Jerusalem, and it becomes almost like a North Korea, hermit state, and it's this chilling dystopian future, and it's really, really well written, and it comes from the perspective of his son, who works in the temple, but is kind of an embarrassment because he was injured somehow and became impotent. And I don't remember the exact details, or maybe he became a eunuch. I don't remember the exact details, but it's written from the perspective of sort of the cowering son that sort of has to play this dutiful role to his demagogue father, and also seeing the destructive element of it, and writing as though as though it's his diary. Really, really good. And then Haminatzachat is another one of these examples where it's a man writing from a woman's perspective and just nails it. And it's how I couldn't even imagine, I'm not sure I could write a novel from my own perspective, let alone, getting the voice and the feel of, the other gender. So it's really incredible. And it's basically about a woman who is a psychologist that is a psychologist for the army in teaching generals how to deal with their troops and make them better soldiers. And the story is basically told from her perspective, about her secret love child with one of the generals, and also about her living in the shadow of her, superstar father who was this superstar psychologist in his own right, and her trying to find her own way as a single mother, and living in the shadow of her father. Really good.
Sounds like a great setup.
Yeah, he's incredible. Yishai Sarid, definitely worth reading, and he has a bunch of stuff in English, so definitely highly recommended. And then there's a couple books there that I've not read. There's one that sometimes where you you buy a book that you've never heard of and it's not famous, and it just turns out to be like a hidden gem. So that's one of the examples. The maroon colored one with the white text. It's called Altikrali Kultum, which means don't call me Kultum. And Kultum was like, think of like the biggest superstar singer like Taylor Swift. She was like Taylor Swift times 10 in the Arab world in like the 60s and 70s. And like the biggest superstar you could ever imagine in the Arab world. And what a lot of people don't necessarily know, is that a little over half of the population of the Jewish population of Israel are Jews that came from, or unfortunately were expelled from Arab countries. So, and they had been there for, hundreds to even, over 1,000 years. So it's essentially a group of people, especially during that era in the late 1940s, early 50s, of these Arab Jews that came to Israel and were sort of like many immigrant groups caught between like two worlds, right? They're like Arab culture and their Jewish culture, and having been kicked out of the Arab countries, but still sort of steeped in the pop culture, movies. If you talk to any of the old timers, like Egyptian cinema was like the pinnacle, and it's like there's nothing that tops like Egyptian cinema from their perspective, right? And Kulthum was like I said, it's like Taylor Swift times 10. So the book's not about that, but it's about a woman who's a police officer who was raised in like the slums, kind of, where a lot of Middle Eastern Jews moved after they were expelled, and growing up sort of in this like broken family and being a police officer. And ultimately it's like a whodunit. It's like a little bit of a mystery novel, but it's a little bit deeper. And I went to a book fair. There's like a Tel Aviv book fair a couple times a year. And I went, and I see the book like propped up, and there's a woman behind it. And I go, "Is this your book?" And she said, "Yes." And I think I made a joke. I said, like, "Is it any good?" She said, "You be the judge." And I bought it, and I loved it. So that's that. I don't think is in English. And then there's a couple of those books that I've not read. Those are the two books that I just showed by Guy M. The bigger ones.
Oh, these two, yeah, with the eyes.
Yeah. And and then there's a couple other books in there. One of them I read, it's called Chokhmat HaBegale, and it's kind of like it's called the wisdom of the pretzel, right? It's like a classic, like, I almost want to say like bro, like immature guy's book. It's like, it's kind of about like a lost guy in his mid-20s, maybe late 20s, that kind of just like sleeps his way around and is trying to find himself. It's kind of like it's almost kind of like, you ever read anything by like Bukowski?
Yeah, we actually my bookshelf tour with Michael McGill, he's really into Bukowski, and I was actually thinking about him when we were looking at Fight Club. But yeah, we talked about a bunch of his books.
Yeah.
For people.
I really like Bukowski. And it's like it's shocking, it's sick, it's wild. It's like if literature was a rock star, like that's it. And I think that it's not exactly the same, but there's like elements of that in Chokhmat HaBegale. Yeah, so that's okay. So there's a couple funny things there. We can do the elephant in the room, that top book, the Female Orgasm, which is funny because when I sent you the picture, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, should I have taken that off? I don't know. It was another Tel Aviv park bench book. I had just had dinner with a bunch of friends, and we pass a bench, and there's a bunch of books, and we start looking through them, and I pick that one up, and I mean, there's just like too many jokes like to make about it. That like, men need a book on it, or the fact that it's that thick, and like, it's just, there was too much. So I'm like, I got to take this. So it's more of a gag. I don't really plan on reading it. But it's a conversation starter, certainly on my shelf when friends come over and start perusing. But it's also funny that it's written by a man. But anyway, the rest of the books, there's a couple of graphic novels.
Would you consider it to be like medically accurate?
I have no idea. I haven't even opened it up, to be honest. It could be all blank pages for all I know. There's a couple. Those are just a couple of museum books. I love art, and sometimes go to a museum. I have a hard time not buying something in the gift shop. And I have a bunch of art books that I frankly barely ever look at, but I don't know. I like having them. I went through a huge graphic novel phase when I was in my early 20s. When I first started my first job out of college, I had a hour and 10-minute commute each way, and I ripped through tons and tons of books. Like I that's like really where I became a real reader. And I worked in New York, and I had to switch trains at 14th Street. And for New Yorkers, they know that there is the most famous bookstore in New York. There's two. There's the Union Square Barnes and Noble, which is like the flagship store, which is really cool. My mom and Seamus did a book reading there a couple weeks ago. But then there's the Strand, which is my favorite, not my favorite bookstore, my favorite store in the world. It is one of the biggest used bookstores in the world, and it's incredible. And it's kind of like a New York institution. And, every couple Fridays after work, we would get out of work early often on Fridays. And I would stop there and just peruse, and I'd get something. And I really got into graphic novels during that period. And this is only a tiny bit. Most of them are in storage now, but like this is just a tiny, tiny bit of my collection. Stuff that I've either read that I've wanted to read again. So the two, Buddy Does Seattle and Buddy Does New Jersey, those are by this guy, Peter Bagg. And he's like a Seattle-based like comic, like in the grunge era of Seattle music, like Nirvana era, like, I think like late 80s, early 90s. It's just awesome. It's kind of, I just bring Bukowski again. It's like raw, it's vulgar, it's misogynistic, and it's utterly hilarious. And I love the art, and it's just really, really well done. So I love his work. And then next to that is Art Spiegelman's like really famous, probably the most famous graphic novels are Mouse and Mouse 2, which are, it's about the Holocaust, by a survivor who's a cartoonist. And it's it's anthropomorphized as like cats and mice, right? Anthropomorphized cats and mice, retelling of parts of the Holocaust. Definitely, that's kind of like a must read, I'd say.
Yep.
And then the other one is that Hebrew one is called Harealist, which is the realist. That's also another one I got at the book fair that I'd never heard of, and it's a graphic novel. I just was drawn to the cover. I'll show you. And it's kind of just about like a father. It's written from his own perspective, and it's about a father just trying to navigate like life, and being realistic about certain dreams, like having to give up on certain things, living vicariously through your kids. And I think it's just a very it's almost have you ever read American Splendor?
No.
Or seen the movie American Splendor, by Harvey Pekar? It's also just like one of these things about just like life is mundane and tough, and there's sort of like some escapism through cartoon drawing. But it was really good. I really liked it. And then this one, the next one on the shelf, this one is called what was it called again? It's hard to read the I read this like 20 years ago. Oh yeah, Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on earth. And I describe this, it's a graphic novel, and it is probably like the most bleak, sad book I've ever read in my life. I've been meaning to reread it, but it's so sad and bleak that I literally haven't read it since, I think I read it in like 2014 or something. So I guess I haven't read it. It's less than 20 years, but I haven't read it in like 10 years.
Is it like a commentary on smart kids or gifted kids?
No, honestly, I don't even remember the plot. I think it's more like nihilistic and just about like bleak life. It's like, I honestly don't even remember the plot. I remember the feeling reading it, that it was just like jumping into the abyss. Uh, I think I don't think I read Jews of the Sudan. I think that's on my to read list. That's another copy of the Flipping Capo. That was like the galley copy, like the pre-published version that my mom gave me to read. So I just have another copy. And then the book My Struggle, which is right next to it. It's Karl Ove Knausgaard. This is My Struggle 2. I didn't get through this one. I've been meaning to start it again and read it. This was like super popular when I read it. Like, I don't know, I read the first one, like, I think maybe during college or shortly after college. And it is a 7-part series about a guy writing a 7-part series novel. And it is so good. I only read the first one. It is so good. Some of the best writing I've ever read. I think it was written in Norwegian or originally. And it's just spectacular. Have you heard of it?
No. Or
Okay. Yeah.
I think I've heard the last name before, but not the series.
I can't speak for the rest of it, but the first one was phenomenal. I think if I reread it, I'll probably reread the first one and then read the second and see if I want to continue. But really good.
So that wraps up. There is that. That's just a picture. So we can move. You want to move on to the next shelf here?
Yeah, sure. I think these are all books that I have read. So How to Cook Everything. My mom got me that when I went to college. It's like kind of like one of the like greatest cookbook ever written, supposedly, by Mark Bittman. It's really good. Now in the age of the internet, right? Like I use it more for like inspiration. Like I'm not like taking it out like and sitting, and putting it in my kitchen and cooking with it, but I sometimes flip through it if I'm hosting a meal and I want to idea something new. I'll flip through it and then I'll probably go online and actually, look up something more detailed, like probably on YouTube. The next book is the next two books are both Israel, or actually, sorry, not Israel related. The My Promised Land is by Ari Shavit, Ari Shavit. And it's about sort of his disillusionment in some ways with like Israeli policy, Israeli politics. And like his own father was a prominent Israeli writer, I believe. Or maybe his father was in the government. I don't remember exactly, but I think his father was a journalist. And it's really interesting because it is the discourse has changed so much in the world since October 7th, but this was like a really interesting book because I like to try and get as many perspectives as I can on certain topics, and especially the ones that I dive deeply into and the ones that affect me, like Israel and Palestine. So I read Israeli writers, I read Palestinian writers, frankly, I've read more Israeli, but I do make it a point to read, quote unquote, the other side as well, and read it in good faith, right? I'm not just reading it to like debate it, but just to see what they're actually saying.
Hmm.
And My Promised Land was interesting because it's written from a left of center Israeli Zionist perspective. So it's a lot more nuanced, I would say, in its view on like the conflict. Obviously, it was written before October 7th. Like I said, it's a new world order in the Middle East post October 7th, but it's still really interesting and worth reading. The book below it is Tuvia Tenenbaum. He is my favorite nonfiction author. Again, sorry, Mom. His most famous book is called I Sleep in Hitler's Bed. Basically, I actually ran into him on the street, and I'm as a born and raised New Yorker, we're like trained. You basically just leave celebrities and famous people alone. This is one where I made an exception because first of all, he's not that, he's a writer, and I went and I'm a huge fan, and I saw him at a coffee shop. He's a very recognizable guy. He's obese and has bright curly blonde hair and really fashionable glasses, so he's extremely recognizable. And I went up to him to just ask him about some of his inspirations, but he wrote a book called I Sleep in Hitler's Bed, he wrote it originally in German. He speaks English, German, Yiddish, Hebrew, and Arabic fluently. He is just one of the most interesting people probably on planet Earth. He's a journalist, he's a playwright, he's an impresario, an author, and when he wrote his two most famous books, I Sleep in Hitler's Bed and Catch the Jew, he was described as like a highbrow Borat. It's the most unbelievable thing because he speaks so many languages, because his personality is just oversized. He is whoever he wants to be in the moment, and he gets access to anything. When he's talking to a Palestinian, he's German. When he's talking to when he's talking to an Egyptian, he's Jordanian. When he talks to an Israeli, he's American, right? He can be whoever he needs to be to get people to open up and sort of hang themselves. And he does have a point of view, right? It's not that he's coming entirely, with just let's see what happens. He does have a point of view, but he lets the people, like I said, he lets them hang themselves, and sometimes it doesn't align with what with his quote unquote agenda. I wouldn't even call it an agenda because he's more I'd say academically honest than that, but it's fascinating and it's hilarious. And I on my Goodreads, your some of your viewers will probably call me God, why can't I keep that word in my head? Not midbrow,
Midwit.
midwit. Yeah. See, I'm such a midwit that I can't even keep the word in my head. They'll call me a midwit, but I rate all of my books that I read on Goodreads, and out of all the books I've ever read, I think there's like maybe 7 that I've given a perfect 10 to, and one of his books called Catch the Jew is a perfect 10. Just absolutely incredible. And basically the shtick is that he's Israeli born, but was raised in Germany and then moved to the US and has been living in the US for most of his life. So he's a prominent playwright and journalist, and his German publisher said, hey, why don't you come back to, and he was raised as a ultra-Orthodox Jew and is now a secular atheist Jew. But basically he was asked by his publisher, hey, why don't you come back to Germany and just write about, what it's like coming back after all these years as a Jew, as a German, etc. And he discovered some things about German society that were not particularly flattering, and he wrote the book. And then his publisher was like, well, you have to change this. It's too intense. It's basically accusing them of not having changed that much ideologically from, pre-Holocaust in terms of their anti-Semitism. And they wouldn't publish it. So he said, I'm not changing it. And he ended up finding a new publisher. It took several years, and it ended up becoming a bestseller in Germany. And then after the success of that, it was published in 1 million different languages and bestseller elsewhere. So they said, hey, his new publisher said, hey, why don't you go back to Israel and do the same thing, right? Go back to where you spent your childhood. And that's when he wrote Catch the Jew, and it's really, really interesting. So, for any of your viewers, even if they have a mild interest in Israel, Palestine, Middle East, Jews, Judaism, that is a really great place to start. It is so funny and poignant and worth reading.
I lost track of the lies they tell versus I sleep in Hitler's bed.
So The Lies They Tell is one of his other books, and I think that one, I've read all of them, so I can't remember which one this is. I think this one is about American policy.
Okay.
He wrote another one about immigration in Europe called Hello Refugees. I don't really remember much about this one, to be honest. It wasn't my favorite.
So Hitler's bed is the one about criticizing Germany.
I wouldn't even go as far as to say criticizing. I mean, yeah, it is criticizing Germany, but it's not criticizing all of Germany or every German. It's just, it's putting a mirror up to an uncomfortable part of German society. And so that one, I Sleep in Hitler's Bed, and Catch the Jew are my two favorite of his.
Yeah, those sound really interesting.
Yeah. Then there's Stephen King, The Gunslinger. That's probably one of his most popular books ever. I did not like it at all. I thought it was boring, and I like Stephen King. I've probably read, I read a lot of him when I was like in high school. I probably read, I don't know, 10 of his books, maybe more. And that's the only one that I really just thought was a dud. And clearly I'm the one missing something because people love it. They're obsessed with it. Like a whole series. He wrote like 7 of them. I just don't get it. And then the one above that is called Tokyo Express. It's another Japanese novel or novella. I really liked it. I like a lot of Japanese literature. I just think that they nail sort of like the human experience in a way that a lot of other literature doesn't. Like, not to say that, like American or European lit doesn't get the human experience, right? Like, that's what it's all about. But there's something, especially from a male perspective, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because their society has so many peculiarities to it. I don't know why, but they really nail the like 30s and 40-year-old man experience so well. And or maybe I just connect to it like that. But
well, they say Japan is always like 10 years or 20 years ahead of the West in terms of technology and social change. So maybe they're prescient.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting you didn't major in Japan or Japanese instead of Chinese.
I think I was more interested, but because I always had that business side to me, I actually talked to like a mentor before I chose my major, and I said, like, I want to study language, and I'd already narrowed it down to Chinese or Hindi, and he basically said, he was like an international businessman that I just admired and in my community, and he said, look, most Indians you're going to do business with speak better English than you do. If you want to learn a language for business, go learn Chinese. So that was really sort of what it came down to. But when I was a kid from like ages like 6 to 14, I was really into karate. And I trained karate as a child and young teenager, and I love Japanese culture. And as a nerd, there's incredible like nerd and geek culture there. So like I'm fat, and I love the food, like sushi and ramen. Like I need nothing else, right? So I haven't been yet, but after I get into medical school, that's my treat to myself. I'm going to do a solo 2 or 3 week trip to Japan. So I think I would have loved learning Japanese. It didn't feel quite as relevant or practical, I should say. I don't remember what If Not Now, When is. Oh, I remember. That was a book that was given to me by a professor of mine in grad school. I had a professor who was a 1-star general, a retired 1-star general in the U.S. Army. Or sorry, 3-star. Not the highest. What's the highest? 5-star or 4-star?
Yeah,
He was
4-star pretty much is the highest for normal.
Okay, so then I think he was a 3-star general then. He was in charge of, his famous thing was, or his like claim to fame, I guess you could say, was he was in charge of Southern Command, which included Haiti at the time of the earthquake. So he was physically there during the earthquake and basically managed the emergency response to the Haiti earthquake. I guess when was that, like 2008 or something? I don't remember exactly, but so anyway, he gave me that book, I think. It's not written by him or about him. I just think he gave me it. And I think I read it because he told me to, but I don't remember much about it. His name is General Ken Keane, by the way, in case you want to look it up and fact check. But really great mentor. He after he retired from the military, his son was at Emory Business School a couple of years before I was there, and he came to be like a guest speaker. And then eventually he like liked it so much they kept inviting him back, and eventually he decided, like, they offered to have him head up their leadership department. So he basically teaches leadership, and it's really cool because he has all these connections, and he takes anyone who wants, including me. I loved it. He took us to Fort Benning to do 2 days of officer training. So the same kind of like problem solving stuff that they do for people in officer training. He brings the MBA students to do that. And it was just a really unforgettable experience. And like, when else would I have access to that as a civilian, right? Obviously, we only did 2 days, not however long officer training is, but it was great.
There's some interesting stuff in his bio I just want to read out.
Sure.
He is best known for serving as Deputy Commanding General of U.S. Army Futures Command and later as Commanding General of U.S. Army Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth. He's a West Point grad, and
it's really crazy about him. Extraordinarily humble. He does not take the air out of the room. It's unbelievable. It's like one of those examples of like leading without needing to be, not without needing to prove you're the smartest, best guy in the room. Unbelievable mentor.
In terms of the number of stars, it was 3 stars, or is 3 stars. So the star system is Brigadier General is 1 star, Major General is 2 stars, Lieutenant General is 3 stars, General is 4 stars, and then General of the Army is 5 stars, and that's wartime only.
Okay, so if General Keane ever sees this video, I apologize for stealing 2 stars off your on the rank. Yeah, he uses it's sometimes you get these like really interesting opportunities to meet just incredible people. So that was one of them. And then there's Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess, which I can't remember the name of the show, but during COVID there was that show about chess on Netflix. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it'll come to me because I was just talking about it with a previous guest.
The Queen's Gambit.
Yep.
So when that came out, just like everybody else, I sort of got reignited into chess. Like I played chess as a kid. I was pretty bad. Like I was really not good. I played in like chess tournaments and chess club when I was in elementary school, and I basically lost all of them. I was not good. But after watching the show, like a lot of people got it reinvigorated into chess. So I bought the book, and I don't think it made me a better player, but it was a nice little thing to do during COVID. And then The Hunger Games, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, Harry Potter. There's just some popular books that I don't even know where I picked them up, but I liked them. I liked all of them. Nick and Nora's I didn't like that much. I thought it was kind of like a bad message. I don't remember what the message was, but I think I remember not liking like I thought the author was trying to like put out a message that he thought was or they, I guess there's two of them, that they thought was like a good message, and I just like completely disagreed with it. I don't remember what it was, but I just didn't like it. But The Hunger Games is great. Harry Potter, great. They're popular for a reason. That Cormac McCarthy book, I think that's Blood Meridian. I did not read that. I read two of his other books. I read The Road, and I don't remember the other one. What's his other famous one? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know I read two of his books and I liked them, and I just never got around to reading that one yet. And that's an old chocolate tin that I keep like movie ticket stubs and random stuff in. Just I don't even know what's in there, but I figure I'll look at it in 10 years and have fun going down memory lane. Then there's my Judaica section. There's the Tanakh, which is the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, and what we call the writings, the Ketuvim. So it's the Jewish canon, right? The official Jewish canon of all the Jewish books. And then there's a Jewish prayer book next to that. Then there's another Bible, Hebrew English dictionary, and then that blue one to the right of the Hebrew English dictionary with the silver text, that's called Kondan Gehalacha. And that one's really interesting. That one is Jewish law as it pertains to medics. So it's medical ethics from a Jewish perspective, or a Jewish law perspective. And it's given to all the new medics in our organization, because like we're a non-denominational organization, meaning like, for example, my instructor when I was being trained to be a medic is this guy Samara, who's he's the head paramedic in our organization in Tel Aviv, which is the highest medical position in our organization in Tel Aviv, and he's Arab. He's a Israeli Arab. We have Jews, Christians, Arab, Muslims, men, women, religious, secular, etc. So it's like everybody's invited to the party, and we treat everybody, whether they're Palestinian, whether they're Jewish, whether they're whoever, right? Somebody in need, we treat them. But there are a lot of Orthodox Jews that are in the organization, and there are a lot of Jewish laws that you have to learn about when it comes to being a medic. And for example, like in Orthodoxy, in Orthodox Judaism, there's like in many religions, there's a very strict code of conduct between men and women. So a man can't physically touch another woman who isn't like his wife, daughter, or mother, right? But in Jewish law, saving a life trumps everything. You can do basically anything that's against the Torah's rules if it's to save a life. So you'll see Sabbath observant ultra Orthodox men. What maybe some of your viewers who are not as intimately in touch with Jews, you'd see with a big black yarmulke, wearing a suit with side curls, and they're Sabbath observant, but they'll hop on their motorcycle, turn on their sirens, and speed off on the Sabbath to save a life. And this talks about basically how you can do things that in ordinary circumstances would not be permissible according to Jewish law. For example, touching a stranger woman, especially maybe in intimate places, where you wouldn't normally be allowed to do that. How can you do that to help someone, to save a life, to treat a patient, while also maintaining as much of the law as you can, basically? So it's interesting. I've never read the whole thing, but I flipped through it, and it's just interesting. It's interesting to see how you can apply laws that are from the Talmud, written 1,000 years ago, and discussed for 2,000 years, to the modern day, basically. That is, I'm going to grab it off the shelf.
Yeah, okay.
That is one of the most special books that I have. It's not a book. This is, and maybe this will be inspiring to you because you're an up and coming YouTuber. This is, and by the way, I think you're going to, what do you have now? 10,000 or 20,000?
Just under like 9,400, 9,500.
Yeah, you're going to have a huge channel.
How do you know that?
Because there's two things that you need. One is a good idea that's in a niche. There are people that don't have niches that are successful, but it's like 1 in a million. But you have a interesting niche, and you work really hard. That's like all you need. You're putting out tons of good quality videos, and you're doing something unusual. You're making videos that are hours long. And how long have you been doing it?
The bookshelf tours really started late last year. So
yeah, you got
in terms of weekly
subscribers.
Yeah.
You got 10,000 subscribers and you're talking about books. Books are supposedly not cool. Books are supposedly, dead, right? I talk about coins, right? Same idea. You literally need two things. You need to have some charisma or stage presence, or you need to be able to be a good interviewer like you are. You need some, I'm not saying it's literally, I'm just distilling it down to the two most important things, which is a good niche that has replicatable content, like what you're doing with the bookshelf tours, and hard work. And you're doing that. It's not easy to put out content like this over and over again. So the proof's in the pudding. You already have 10,000 subscribers almost. It gets easier and easier the bigger you go.
Did you feel like that 10,000 subscribers was a turning point for you, or?
Yes, but it was also a different time because I started my channel in 2011, and I started it on my college bedroom floor filming coins that I had bought at garage sales, and YouTube wasn't a profession yet. It wasn't it was just a place to upload videos basically. And so I made a bunch of videos, but I never took it seriously. I got to about 10,000 subscribers, I think around 2015, maybe 2016. And I bought a nicer camera and I made some more videos, but I didn't really take it seriously until I moved to Israel because I had quit my corporate job and I was doing this startup, and I was I'm leaving money on the table because at that point I was earning about $100 a month on YouTube. And I'm if I take this seriously, maybe I could earn $500 a month. And thank God it turned out to be more than that. And, YouTube, there's a very, high ceiling, and I'm not even close to that ceiling. So it really has been life-changing, honestly. So I remember in 2019, I had 16,000 subscribers, and that was from 2011 to 2016. I had 16,000 subscribers. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to make a video, come hell or high water. I'm going to make a video every single week. And I'm also going to not try to just reinvent the wheel. I'm going to put some effort into it. And I'm a big consumer of YouTube. Why don't I take ideas and frameworks from successful videos that I watch in other areas and see if I can apply that to coins? And I was watching this YouTube channel called Tolarian Community College, which is a magic cards channel. And he had bought some mystery magic card grab bags off of eBay to see if it was worth it. And did he just burn $50 or can he make his money back? And I'm obsessed with these videos. I'm going to watch, I'm going to try and do this with coins. And I bought a $50 coin grab bag off eBay, and it became, at that point, my most successful video ever. And in 1 year of doing videos every single week, I went from 16,000 to 60,000, and it just kind of changed everything. And, there's ups and downs, right? It took me, 2 more years to get from 60,000 to 100. And then, several more years. Now I'm at $250,000 as of literally last week, which is
Congrats.
Thank you. It is crazy to me. I did the math though. At my rate to get to 1 million, my friends are like, "Oh wow, you're almost you're going to be at 1 million before you know it." I did the math. At my rate, it's 17 years. So it's really a far way from that. But like, that's the cool thing about YouTube. But like, most people think about like Mr. Beast or the people with like the hugest followings as like that's success on YouTube. But like, I'm funding this crazy trying to get into medical school adventure at 37 with money that I made talking about coin collecting in front of my computer. Like, it's crazy. And yeah, I think your channel is gonna really grow and grow and grow and grow. It's gonna be a slog. It's always hard, especially in these niches. But like, if you keep at it, like you will have a huge channel, and then you'll start getting subscribers, and you start getting sponsors. I don't know if do you have sponsors yet at all?
I've been getting my first offers right around like just the last few weeks, actually.
Nice. Well, off camera, if you want, you're welcome to take my WhatsApp and we can chat more.
Definitely.
I'm happy to, like, I had other people helping me. I'm happy to pay it forward.
Yeah. Thank you.
And take me up on it, for real.
Yeah, I will.
This is one of my most prized possessions. It starts with the YouTube letter that you get when you reach 100,000 subscribers along with the plaque. So that's how it starts. And it's every piece of physical fan mail I've ever received. And I keep every letter. I mean, I have incredible stuff here from all sorts of people from all over the world. Tons of kids, people that say they watch my videos with 3 generations, grandparents, parents, and grandkids. I mean, this kid did like pencil rubbings of his favorite coins. Happy holidays. Hello from Turkey, like all over the world. And what's really cool, like when you get into like a hobby or a niche, like it really like supersedes like geopolitics and all sorts of stuff like that. Like I've gotten messages on Instagram from Palestinians and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you were Israeli. Like, I love your videos." And it's just like, it really this is going to sound so cheesy, but it really gives so much hope for the world that like, people who have like, really, they're literally at war can just like nerd out on their favorite hobby, like good, clean fun, and just see each other as people that have similar interests. And, I love that. So, getting, this is from Sweden.
So do you have like a PO box that you put in your YouTube description? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I always wondered, like, I see a fair number of YouTubers with that, but I never really see this side of it of like what they actually get.
PO box. Open a PO box. You'll be shocked. And it's not the gifts. People send me gifts. They send me coins and stuff like that. And then companies sometimes send me stuff. And there's some financial gain, right? It costs like what? Like I think it's like $200 a year for a post office PO box.
Yeah.
My PO box is in the U.S. and then when I travel to the U.S., I clean it out. But this is, forget all of that stuff. This is the value.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unreal, and it's years and years and years. I mean, look, I'm talking like little kids will write me, letters.
How does it differ from what you get via email?
Via email is mostly, I get every single day, literally dozens of emails, or I should say every week I get dozens of emails from people asking me about their coins, about like, do I have something valuable? And my perspective on that is basically, if you've shown me that you've like done some work on your own, like we live in the internet age, right? Like you can take a picture with ChatGPT and get any information you want about anything, right? Or just like type it into Google. If you've done research and like, you're like, I still can't figure it out, I want an expert's eyes on it, I will spend time, I will email them back with tons of information. But if I get emails, I'm not joking, I get emails every day with things like, how much, and a blurry picture of a coin that looks like it was taken on a potato. And like, I just don't answer it. I just delete those. And I'd say 90% of the emails I get are people who are lazy and and just want me to do all the work for them. And I'm not about that. You come in good faith. I will roll out the red carpet. I will put time and effort and, there are people that I have 10 emails back and forth with because they're respectful and they put in the work. But when you send me an email that just says how much or coins and then it's pictures, like, what do you want me to do about that? So I've kind of like a little bit of an iron fist when it comes to that, because it feels disrespectful. Like, I wouldn't do that to somebody else and just say how much, you know. But you know, so I've got some really interesting ones here too. Like, I have a Patreon, and one of my Patreon patrons, I know this is gonna sound, so this is cool. This guy, he also collects like antique or vintage stationery, and he wrote this on like a vintage piece of stationery from like the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. Like, how cool is that?
That's actually the other thing my dad got me into besides coin collecting is model trains.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. I think my dad and your dad and me and you and your dad, we'd all get along.
Yeah.
This, I'm going to not show his name, but this is a typewritten letter from one of my Patreon patrons who's become a friend. And he is an ancient coin collector and a typewriter collector. And he collects typewriters from all over the world. And now to some people, this would seem like kind of macabre or weird, but like, I've gotten to know him very well. And like, this is only coming from a place of historical interest. This was written on a typewriter that was a Nazi SS typewriter that even has the keystrokes for, somewhere on here, that has the keystrokes for like the SS symbol. Like, it's hard to see, but it has, you know, the double lightning bolt. So I think some people could look at that as like strange or insensitive, but you know, when you know somebody, it's, you know, it's all about intention. And he wrote just this incredible letter to me, and he combined like, you know, his hobbies, and, you know, we're both obviously history buffs. He wrote me this in 2021.
It's funny, the person who's approached me with the largest library ever, close to 10,000 books, he's a big typewriter collector, and he didn't want to do a public tour, but I've probably spent 50 or 60 hours with him on the phone doing a private tour of his entire library. And so it's kind of funny you should mention that with the typewriter.
Yeah, so this is my favorite piece of mail probably that I've gotten. It's just so unusual and interesting, and like the actual letter itself is almost like a collectible. It's a historical oddity.
And it's interesting paper too, because it's a sort of brand paper.
He wrote it on antique paper also. He's a really interesting guy, like a really interesting guy. And then people who are like other coin YouTubers, like budding coin YouTubers, have sent me their stickers, and I put them on the album when they sent it. So
do you have a sticker for your own brand? Or
I do. This is not it. This is a fan-made sticker. Let's see if I have one near me. I do not. But it's my logo. It's just my YouTube logo.
By the way, where's your plaque?
Oh,
I don't know if you can show that easily, but people might want to. Oh, cool. Nice.
It is, like I said, you know, I'm not really an egomaniac, but I'm also not an egomaniac. I mean, I think you have to be a little bit in love with yourself to be on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. So it is hung up in my living room.
And it's bigger. I guess the one that I'm going to get is going to be smaller. They kind of downsized it.
They keep downsizing it. This is the first of this era. This is the first of this era. But before that, it was even bigger, and it was like a glass framed thing with like, with a little physical metal YouTube play button inside. And then I think the print was on the glass or something, but
I don't know if that's necessarily devaluation, because they've grown so much that maybe percentage wise, 100K isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It was definitely harder to get 100K in that era. And it was harder for me to get 100K than it is now, but it's still an accomplishment. Like, you see how hard it is to get to 10K. You will get, if you keep this up, like, I have no doubt in my mind you're going to get to 100K and beyond. But
yeah, let me see if you can give like just a prediction. Like, if I do one of these a week, when do you think I'll hit 100K?
it is so hard to tell because YouTube is like a real weird mix of like marathon and sprint, and you get these weird like step, like you get like linear boom, because you have one video that goes viral. And excuse me, my most viral video of long form, right? My most viral video of short form is much higher, but my most viral video of long form is like 2.3 million views, and I think I got 60,000 subscribers from that video alone. So, that's just a tremendous percentage of my whole count. So like you can hit a video that will take you from 9,000 to 15,000, right? And that can be within a week, right? And it really is hard to say, because you can look at your rate right now and see how many subscribers you got in the last month, and then maybe add like a couple percent just for snowballing growth, and then just calculate that out. But it's really hard to say, because you hit one viral video and it changes everything. I would highly recommend that you focus as much time on shorts as you do on longs, even though your channel is all about longs and really in depth. Like probably your channel is probably in the 0.1% in terms of like depth on each video compared to across the rest of YouTube. But just to get people in the door, just do some clips of your other videos, and because it's not, and something I've had to learn the hard way, it's not what it used to be. When my view count has gone way down on my long form videos, and I thought that there was just something wrong with my channel, and maybe my stuff got stale. But then I did a lot of research on it, and basically if you look at the YouTube homepage, it is flooded with shorts. YouTube longs are barely on the screen, and even less so on mobile. So I'm posting videos, and I'm lucky to get 10,000 views on most of my long form videos. Yeah, I have some that go viral and get 100,000 plus views or a million views, but that's few and far between. But I'm regularly hitting 10,000, 20,000 plus on shorts. And my most successful video ever, long form, is, like I said, 2.3 million views. And a couple months ago, I posted a short, and it's by far beaten that, and it has over 8.5 million views. So it's just, it's just a new dynamic. The platform is inherently different than it used to be. So for growth, I would say the only real way to grow fast is with shorts, but don't compromise your art and your whole point, which is going deep. But you can get some more people in the door with the shorts.
So you think I should just do short clips from the bookshelf tours?
Yeah, or like whenever you do you do some in-person stuff too, right? Or
It's really just the one that I did with Harvard.
okay. You could do all sorts of stuff. You could have everybody also give like their favorite book and talk about why for a minute, and you can clip that, or you can just anything interesting. Play around with it. There's no right answer, and that's the wonderful thing. We're not shooting on film, right? You're not gonna lose out on anything. If the video's a dud, it's a dud. Move on to the next.
Yeah. All right, let me get back into the screen share here. So what do you call this book?
Ooh, I should name it. It's just the Silverpicker fan mail album. I should come up with a better name. I don't even have anything on the spine except for a couple of stickers.
So now we're on the last shelf here on the bottom.
Yeah. I think those two books on the left are books that I also found on the street and just never got around to reading them yet. The book to the right of that, or above that, is now I'm forgetting the name, but it's really famous. What is it called? The Shadow of the Wind, maybe. I've just seen it all over the place, and I found a copy of it, so I decided to pick it up. Eventually, I'll read it. And then
Edgar Allan Poe.
Sorry about that. That is, I think that was a gift from my dad, because he knew that I liked that Edgar Allan Poe. Oops. And then those were a couple of books that were gifted to me that I have not read yet. And that one's really cool. Thinking with Type. That is, if you thought I was a nerd already when I'm talking about coin collecting and Magic the Gathering cards, Thinking with Type is a book all about fonts. And I was in my first job out of college, I was working in marketing, and I just kind of got obsessed with design, and this book was like really popular in that world at the time. And I'll show you that. What is that? What is that? There we go. It's first of all, I think it's just a beautiful book, Thinking with Type. And it's just all about different fonts and typeface, and it has history. And if you are doing anything in design, it also is just like such a good like database for inspiration, right? You can just pop it open and look through it and get some ideas. By Ellen Lupton, really cool. So I bought that when I was working in marketing. And let's see, what else do we have over here? Yeah, these are books that are on my to-read list. Golda, it's the biography of Golda Meir, Israel's first female prime minister. And then flash fiction. Oh, that was I think I was like on a vacation somewhere and I like found that book. I think it might have been like in the Airbnb. And don't worry, there was like a sign that said you can take any books that you want home with you. And it's flash fiction. It's like fiction that's, at longest like 3 pages, and like at shortest like a couple of sentences. I think there was that famous one that I think is attributed to Hemingway, but it's not actually confirmed that he wrote it. Do you know what I'm about to say? You know what I'm talking about?
It's the baby.
Yeah, baby shoes for sale, never worn. And like, I mean, that brings tears to my eyes even when I say it. I've heard it a million times. And I remember, I think I was like like a freshman in college when I first heard of the concept of like flash fiction, and I heard that, and I was just like, it just like blew my mind. So when I saw this, I grabbed it. This is not that good. I read like half of it. This is not good, but I don't even remember any of it. But and then there's Constitution of the United States of America, always good as a reference. Nora McTeague is a book my mom wants me to read that she gave me, and I just haven't read it yet. Call the Wild is a book that I never read as a kid, and my dad never read. And my dad and I like to do like book clubs with just the two of us. So we'll like pick a book and read it together. And it's like a young adult fiction novel, but like neither of us had read it. And so we both read that a couple of years ago. Thinking Fast and Slow. My dad really liked it. I didn't like it, by the way. Thinking Fast and Slow, super famous book that I have not read. It's on my list.
So what's this contraption?
Blood pressure cuff. I've got like a lot of medical devices and stuff from as a medic. We do it by hand, but I got that somewhere and I guess ended up on my shelf. And then the last thing is a sketchbook, which I don't really draw anymore, but when I was a teenager, I have an older cousin who I still love, but as a kid and teenager, I absolutely idolized and basically did everything he did. And he's a very talented artist, and he would draw, so I got a sketchbook and I wanted to draw, but I have some creativity. I am proud of that, but I have little to no practical skill. Like it is not good.
So I don't know if you have your medical textbooks nearby, but people might be interested in just seeing like the size of these things.
So I have the textbooks in digital only.
Oh, okay.
But I'll show one thing. So to practice, this is just biochem. Oh, this is the organization that I'm part of, United Hatzalah.
Nice.
So this, for biochem, there's a lot of like metabolic pathways. And in order to learn them, I've drawn them out. And I basically draw every protein, every molecule, every cofactor, and I've got pages and pages and pages of this stuff. And this is just for biochem. There's also 3 other sections. There's biochem, cell biology, molecular biology, and physiology. So it's a tremendous amount. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
It's really amazing. And I mean, I knew just from your photos, you had an interesting range of stuff, but to actually be like going to med school and doing all that and having a YouTube channel, that's like shocking to me. So it's been really cool.
Thank you. This was a blast. I loved this. I would come back on if there was ever anything else you wanted me to talk about, or I had such a good time. And please take me up on it if you want to talk shop, talk YouTube stuff. I've got plenty of good lessons learned the hard way that maybe you can avoid. I just had such a good time, and I hope your viewers enjoyed it. And they can find me on YouTube, and if they want to message me directly, Instagram or Silverpicker everywhere.
Do you want to just say about your different web, where people can find you on, and what you're doing on the different social medias, if there's anything special?
Yeah, absolutely. So YouTube is like the mothership. Basically everything in terms of content is there first. So long form, short form, Silverpicker. You type in Silverpicker, or probably even if coin collecting, you'll find my videos. And then I have a website, thesilverpicker.com. I'm not like Facebook. I couldn't afford to drop the. I'm not paying $2,000 for that screen name. But you can check that out, and that's if you're more interested in like looking up interesting things about your coins. If you have coins, you want to check the values. There's articles about lots and lots and lots of coins there. And then I have another website called silverpacks.co, and everything's sold out there right now. But I melded my 2 loves of trading cards and coins, and I launched my own coin trading card pack, basically. So it's not cards, it's coins, but it's with the thrill of the hunt, where you don't know what you're going to get, and you have a chance to get like super, super valuable coins. In the launch edition, we had 25 hits, 10% of the packs had hits, 250 packs, 10%, and including a $6,000 gold coin from 1926. So it was really fun. It sold out, but I'm going to be doing another launch, hopefully right after I finish this exam. TikTok and Instagram, I have a lot of short form stuff, but the best way to like actually contact me is either through email, thesilverpicker@gmail.com, or on Instagram @silverpicker. And I'm sure there's other stuff, but that's plenty.
You have your Patreon. I was sort of a little bit confused about like, what are the main things that you sell? Like, what is the basis of your business besides the Patreon and YouTube revenue?
Oh, so I earn money through YouTube basically from AdSense, which is like the Google ads, and through sponsorships. That's the main source of the income. I have some merch, like I'm wearing one of my designs, but like that's more for like fans that wanted it, because I make almost no money on that. In the 6 years that I've been selling merch, I've sold well over 1,000 pieces, and I think I've made like $2,000 in like 6 years. It's really not for the money. It's for people who want to get some Silverpicker swag. But it's mostly sponsorships, YouTube AdSense. And then I do have that product line that I launched, which is really fun, Silver Packs.
Do you spell that?
Silver, SILVER, Packs, PACKS, .co.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot again. Really appreciate the time and getting to see an awesome collection and just hear your story. I think the medic stuff is really cool, and taking it to the next level with the MD. And so we'll have all the links down below. And we'll wrap up here. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. Like I said, this was a blast. And I hope this is not the last time we cross paths.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe we'll reconnect once you finish with med school and you're sort of in the emergency medicine doing your thing.
Would love to.